Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remus.
Hey, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to WST, a little Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily for you, kicking off the weekend. And get ready for that big Bomber game on Sunday night in BC against Nathan Rourke and the BC Lions. It's going to be a fun one. Scotty Billeck's jumping on today. We're going to talk some Bombers and Jets NHL offseason with him. We're going to get ready for UFC 305, a hell of a main event. Duplessis and the style bender Izzy Adesanya down under in Perth, Australia this weekend. We won't talk a ton of UFC, but when we have the chance to bring on our pal Aaron Bronsteter, we do it. Bron will be on a little bit later on. Fill us in on this card this weekend, this highly anticipated main event, as well as some news and notes on Winnipeg's Brad Katona, UFC event coming to Canada, as well as what the heck is going on with Conor McGregor. We'll get to that a little bit later on. And of course, it's Friday. We are counting down to NFL kickoff. And the man himself, Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, will join us a little later on. And I have good news. It looks like, despite Michael Remus's absence, Marbles is going to be a go today. We are going to give it a run. I think our guy Andrew behind the scenes is crossed the T's and dotted the I's, and we will make it happen a little bit later on. So towards the end of the show, around 2:45, you know what to do. Exclamation mark Marbles will let you know when to join, and make sure to stick around for that. But we got an interesting game to kick off the CFL last weekend. We'll get to that right away, as well as more on the Bombers and everything else heading into the weekend. Before we do that and welcome in Connor Hrabchak, do want to thank all the sponsors that make WST happen each and every day. Of course, there's a new edition of CFL 110 out from a couple days ago. Tons on the return of Nathan Rourke. If you missed our almost live reaction to it, because it happened moments before we got going with CFL 110, you should check it out. It's brought to you by Garage Living Winnipeg, and it's up on the YouTube channel. Of course, we also want to thank our friends at Coolbet Canada. Just had a real fun lock shop with Pat and Jake, breaking down some of our favorite NFL team futures for the upcoming season. You can check that over at the Edmonton Sports Talk YouTube channel. Of course, our friends at Princess Auto, Rollies Transfer, Consolidated Supply and Manitoba Battery, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Canadian Club, Royal Sports, The Beer Can, along with Next Door and Hoagie Boys, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, the Goldeyes, who are back in action tonight after that rainout yesterday, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodges, Cinnaboya Downs. We'll do a golf report from the FedEx Cup playoffs for our friends at Breezy Bend. And, of course, a why not question of the day for not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. And we will kick around the Cool Bet lines, real tight lines for the rest of these three games in the Canadian Football League so far. All right, with Michael Remus away, we're once again joined by Connor Hrabchak. Connor, what's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing great. Got the night off last night as the Goldeyes game was unfortunately
what did you end up doing?
Back. I went to Leopold's Tavern and watched the CFL game and just kind of went to Leopold's with my girlfriend and just hung out. Took the night, nice relaxing night. We're back at the ballpark tonight. Manitoba Social Night, Fred Penner bobblehead. So go check it out. I think still tickets available, but they're going fast because people want to come out, check the Goldeyes. So get on the tickets now if you want to come. But great night last night. Nice to relax and right back at it tonight at the ballpark.
Yeah, it's getting nicer after a rainy day that cost the Fish and Sioux Falls the final game of their series. It should be a good one tonight. Little windy, but fireworks tonight, the Manitoba Social theme. And again, if you are going to the game tonight with your heart set on a Fred Penner bobblehead, get there early. First 1,000 fans through the gates today. We'll get that. And I'm sure you've seen it, Connor. I mean, it looks hilarious. It's Fred sitting there playing the guitar with the cat, who obviously came back. So they've done a lot of really cool ones. My personal favorite was the Dancing Gabe bobblehead, but this one right up there. And only the Goldeyes doing something so fun and so cool as the Fred Penner bobblehead.
Yeah, just sitting here at my desk, I've got the Reggie Abercrombie bobblehead that they gave out last year. That was a great night as well. Big crowd for that one. Goldeyes got a big win. And yeah, tonight, another Friday night, August, big crowd, bobblehead night. The bobblehead nights are always a win, but when it's on a Friday in August and it's supposed to be nice, even though it's a little windy, I'm super excited for the building to be pretty full tonight as we're expecting. And everyone come down, watch this first place Goldeyes team. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, the entire weekend's going to be great. Tomorrow's the Bark in the Park. If you want to bring your pup,
that's also great. Yeah.
You'll find out more details on that because it's a little bit different than a normal game. I'm sure there's some, not necessarily rules and restrictions, but some guidelines, how that's all working. So go to goldeyes.com for that. And then again on a Sunday afternoon, the final game of this series, and then a road trip and one more homestand for the Fish. And then that kind of finishes up on Labor Day weekend. And then the playoffs will be starting right afterwards. And Connor, as we talked about quite a bit yesterday, considering where this team is at, the way that they've been playing, the probabilities of playoff baseball here at Blue Cross Park look pretty darn good as of right now heading into tonight.
Yeah, and that first week of September, it's going to tie everyone perfectly into Jets season. Jets training camp usually is the third week of September, but you've got the Labor Day Classic. I know you're heading out on the bus, and a lot of fans are going there. Then you've maybe got some playoff baseball. Then, of course, you've got the Banjo Bowl, which is already sold out months in advance or weeks in advance at this point. But yeah, that first week of September after Labor Day always is super fun for me because it's the start of like hockey season's coming back. You get the Labor Day Banjo Bowl, NFL season's beginning. That is when I think that the sports calendar is honestly at one of its peaks, is that early September to mid-October window when the NHL season actually starts. But I'm super pumped.
See, you're still, you still got a little bit of school left to do, so you may not feel the same way I do. But I do remember when I was younger, I'm a pretty chill guy. The last couple weeks of August, I would get crippling anxiety thinking about what was to come. Back in the classroom in September, summer holidays being over, and you almost couldn't enjoy the last little bit of August. How things change as you get older, because honestly, as much as I love August and I'm pumped for the fantasy drafts and everything that'll be happening over the next couple of weeks, I cannot wait for Labor Day, the Labor Day trip, the Labor Day weekend, and then to get on the other side and get going with the stretch in the Canadian Football League, kickoff in the NFL, and of course, NHL training camps. And now there's still a bit of work to do for the Winnipeg Jets regarding Cole Perfetti, as we've talked about extensively on the program. And I imagine that will sort of heat up more right in and around Labor Day. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, and we'll ask Scott today when he comes on later on. I mean, there is a sense of urgency, but nothing like the urgency that'll be when you get closer to training camp. And Connor, I mean, if you look back in the past, there's been a number of individuals in the same situation that Cole Perfetti have signed either right on the eve of camp or sometimes missing a day or two. So, I mean, as they say, if history tells us anything, I'm not sure we'll get any clarity in the next couple weeks. And then all of a sudden it's back to work for everyone and down to business. And they'll need to figure out. I don't know if I've asked you this, though. And I know you've talked about it on some of the other program we've got on WST. But if you had to lean one way, I mean, are you expecting a shorter term deal, like a 2-year deal, or you think that there still might be legs on doing something longer term for Perfetti with the Jets?
Yeah, that's something I've bounced back and forth on, if I'm being honest. Like, the fact that they have over $5.5 million in cap space makes it really interesting. I know a lot of Jets fans were worried. They saw the offer sheets in Edmonton and they thought, oh my goodness, we have an RFA, a star RFA that's unsigned. If someone came in and said 8 years, $6 million for Cole Perfetti, they'd be doing the Jets a favor because the Jets would just match it and they'd have him long term. So you don't have to worry about that in any way. They have enough cap space to cover an incoming offer sheet. But this whole time I've been saying 2 years, $3.5 million. But as this goes on longer, I feel like there's a higher chance that it could be a longer term deal and we could see that happen. And going into training camp, seeing that, all we've heard from Scott Arniel is that he's going to give Cole Perfetti his opportunities and he's excited about what Cole Perfetti can do this upcoming season. And I'm sure Cole Perfetti and his camp love to hear that. And if they really like what they're seeing, maybe it even drags into training camp a little bit. And then they get that deal signed. But I'm going to stay on the short term. I've been on that side the whole time. I'm not going to flip back. I do think there's a higher chance that there could be a long-term deal here, but 2 years, $3.5 million, I think. I said that at the end of last season. I think that's where it ends up.
Yeah, listen, I'm totally with you. I mean, if it does end up being a 2-year deal, I think that's going to be the range that'll be in there. Give or take a couple $100,000 on either side.
Yeah.
And listen, and I don't know whether I'd call for it, but I agree that I think there is a better chance of a long-term deal right now than maybe what we were thinking a month ago or so. And I think a big part of that is what's happened elsewhere around the league. I mean, we've seen a lot of players in similar situations to Perfetti opt to get paid more now, give up a little bit of term when it comes to being an unrestricted free agent, and get their money earlier. Like I said before, I think Cole Perfetti on a 5-year deal doesn't make sense for the Jets. It's either going to be 2 or it's going to be 6 or 7. But, if he can sign that, get paid what he probably should be making now, the Jets can afford it right now. It gives them cost certainty moving forward. And the bottom line is, like, if he signs for 3.5 right now, when he could sign for 6, you got to make up that $5 million later on. And even for a guy that has been hurt at times in the past, there is an element of the bird in the hand, if you will. It's better to have that money right now. And as I say, I think we're seeing more and more players opt for that. Like, there's an element, I know, he's going to bet on himself, which is fine. But I mean, there's like, if he's able to cash in and get an extra $5 million over the next couple of years, if you don't get that, you're talking about then instead of a $6 million, you need to get to 7.25 over the next 4 years to make up that $5 million. So, and we'll get it the latest from Billeck when he joins us at the bottom of the hour. Scott had been a guy that had been pretty firmly on this is going to be a bridge deal, but in his reporting over the last couple of weeks, he said, from hearing around the camp, there certainly is an openness to discussing that. So, I mean, we're not going to get a lot right now. I'll try and see if I can get any info from Chevy on Sunday night out of Breezy Bend. But like most things, I think we are all on a need-to-know basis, and we will know when it's done. But certainly that's happening behind the scenes. So we'll touch on that with Billeck a little bit later on. By the way, shout out to everybody in chat. Comment, don't worry. iHeart Gaming, Rob Mahoney. Like, what is all this fake news here? We're doing marbles today. We've been working extensively behind the scenes to make this happen. Our guy Andrew's got it. Michael Remus, his dedication to all of you, or maybe just fearing the mutiny that would happen if we weren't able to pull it off today. Even on his time off, has been working with them. So yes, we do expect to do a marble race. So sit around a little bit later on. We got a real interesting game in the CFL tonight. But quickly, let's get to last night's game. I will admit my streak of betting the Stamps correctly is over, but I'll kind of take it because they needed to cover 2.5 points. They were up by 1 late, so there was no win either way. Well, why not have the Ottawa Red Blacks win on a little walk-off at the end? Lewis Ward field goal. Ottawa wins in a really, really fun and entertaining game that went back and forth, tons of points in the game, and the return of Jeremiah Masoli. First of all, from a Bomber perspective, great news. Calgary takes a loss at home. That helps the Bombers as well as everybody else in this playoff race in the West. But really, to me, the story of the game was Masoli getting back under quarterback, and that Ottawa offense looked pretty lethal for a good portion of the game last night, Connor.
He looked really good, Jeremiah Masoli. That was the main takeaway from the game for me. I mean, Drew Brown has been, he's the local connection. He was with the Bombers. So we had seen a little bit of him in the blue and gold last year. And we knew that, he had some big games against Edmonton and things like that. But we weren't sure about him coming into Ottawa this year. He took kind of the quarterback job and by storm and was great through the first couple of weeks. Now he's injured. Jeremiah Masoli, very different path. He's not the young and up-and-coming guy anymore. He's been around the league, had a ton of injury issues, but it was really, really nice to see him go out there, lead the offense. They really and then they cut to him after the game, and he was just over the moon, excited. Like, you could tell how much of a relief it was for him to get this win, get back playing, and have a good game at that. Like, He didn't throw an interception. He didn't turn the ball over. He played well in the game and got a win on the road, a big one for Ottawa as they are kind of chasing down Montreal here in the East. Montreal, you'll need to slide a little bit, but they're right there. They're 6-2-1 now after that bizarre tie. And Jeremiah Mazzoli, Drew Brown, whoever it is, they're leading that offense, and Ottawa continues to surprise this year. I mean, I wouldn't have guessed them at 6-2-1 after these weeks here, and never mind having Jeremiah Mazzoli play one of those games and look good in it.
Well, and you know what the funny thing was? I mean, we talk about this all the time in the lock shop and when we're doing our power rankings and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, they've won, but who have they beaten? I mean, the Bombers probably should have won that game in Ottawa. They didn't. They beat them here. They beat up on Edmonton and Hamilton. Well, I'll tell you what, going into Calgary, traveling across the country, beating a team that was undefeated at home in the fashion that they did, that's a quality win for Bobby Dice and his club right now. And listen, things are looking up in the nation's capital. It's great for the league. I think there's a lot of people, myself included here in Winnipeg, that are huge fans of Bob Dice. Happy to see what's happening there with him. And Bomber fans a little more thankful to Ottawa for getting that win yesterday against the Calgary Stampeders, considering the predicament that we're in right now. And listen, with Montreal in Saskatchewan today and this game between the Bombers and BC, I mean, we could see an incredible logjam depending on the results of these games, Connor. And like, as I mentioned, Gabe Morency said, it's almost like we're starting over again in the West. Now, the Bombers are at a bit of a deficit and they got a real tough test this weekend, but it is incredibly wide open, including the Edmonton Elks, who are favorites on the road in Hamilton. And, if the Bombers and Elks can win and maybe even get a win from Montreal, we're talking about basically a 5-horse race for the West right now, and every team fully in on the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, last week was also hilarious. Remus and I were running through the cool bet lines on the Friday, and BC coming off the disappointing loss to Winnipeg, not having Vernon Adams, and Edmonton coming off of the big win on the road against Saskatchewan. All of a sudden, they were favored over BC. And I know Vernon Adams wasn't playing, but it's like, this team is 0-7. They just got their first win, and now they're favorites against the top team in the West, or one of the top 2 teams in the West. And that just speaks to, quarterback play in the CFL and how much things can change in a week. But, oh my goodness, yeah, if all those things break that way, like you said, this week, it's just going to be absolute chaos. BC and Saskatchewan will each have 5 wins. Winnipeg will get their 4th over BC. And then Edmonton, what would that be? Their 3rd straight win. They'd be at 3 and the hottest team in the West in the moment. So it would just be absolute chaos. And at that point, it's like, who's the best team in the West? Is it Edmonton, even though they have the least amount of wins, but they've won 3 straight? It's really like it's wild, but I'm all here for it.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet.
Okay.
Tell you what, the Bombers will be feeling pretty good about themselves that they can get this win. And listen, they were favorites earlier this week. I mean, the lines flipped completely on the other side. There's been so much hype around Nathan Rourke coming back, and I get it. I mean, it's exciting for the league. It's exciting for fans, creating a huge buzz in BC and selling a lot of tickets. But let's face it, this guy showed up at practice on Wednesday. He's been 2 years removed from the team. I don't know how many different playbooks he's had in his hands and been studying over the course of the last little while between Jacksonville and the Giants and the Falcons. He is a player, though, and I do expect he'll come back. And I'm not sure I'm going to say not miss a beat. He'll make them a lot more competitive. But let's not forget, Connor, what the Winnipeg Blue Bomber defense has been up to over the past month, allowing 19 in Saskatchewan, allowing as a defense only 6 points in Toronto, and then saying, you know what, we're not going to allow any room for error. We'll shut out the BC Lions in their last game. So, I mean, the Bombers are trending really well. And listen, the big news when it comes to Winnipeg is the return of Kenny Lawler to the lineup. And hard to overstate how important he is to this Bomber offense, Connor, considering the loss of Dalton Schoen and just how challenged the Bombers have been, especially to put it in the end zone and make those huge plays while the 2 of their top receivers have been on the shelf.
Yeah, I do want to touch on the defense, but quickly on Lawler. I mean, the first couple of weeks, they were making a lot out of the fact that Collaros didn't have a passing touchdown. Well, who's the best red zone target on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? It has to be Kenny Lawler. I mean, he's got the size, he's got the jump ball ability. You can just throw it up in one-on-one, and there's a pretty good chance that he's coming down with it. He's undoubtedly the best red zone, best end zone target for Zach Collaros, and them finishing off drives. That was something that Remus said on the Friday last week. If you want to nitpick that win against BC, maybe it's that the offense didn't finish off enough drives. They had the ball a lot, and that was good. They kept their defense resting, and then they ended the drives with Castillo field goals. But if you could maybe finish off some of those drives, make it touchdowns, make it look even worse than 25-0, which the game was 25-0. Like you said yesterday, it was flattering to BC. Kenny Lawler's going to help with that. As for the defense, we talked about yesterday all the kind of motivating things that the Bombers can have going into this game. You think the defense, who's been the best defense in the CFL over the last month, getting the extra challenge of facing this NFL guy coming in, selling all these tickets, you think that's not firing them up? Like this is going to get them going, and they're going to have to make another statement if last game's statement wasn't enough against Nathan Rourke in BC. An even bigger challenge. I'm so excited to watch the defense, especially, and Kenny Lawler hopefully get a touchdown on Sunday.
Yeah, no doubt. And listen, I mean, we're talking about the defense and the challenge they have, and listen to what Kenny Lawler brings back to the offense. I think Kenny Lawler alone also is going to help the running game. And I'm not suggesting he's Rashid Bailey blowing guys up in front of Brady Oliveira, but the bottom line is the attention that they're going to have to give Kenny Lawler. I mean, it's going to just change the way defenses look at the Winnipeg offense and attack. I mean, for a while, it was Nick Dembski, it was Drew Olatarski, who's been hurt right now. Lucky Whitehead came into the lineup and was productive last week, although doesn't look to be starting at the wide receiver position. But to me, I mean, it always starts on the offensive line, Connor, and that line was quite maligned for the first part of the season. I mean, especially even in the Toronto game, Zach just was always had guys in his face and was getting rushed. The fact of the matter is right now, and we saw it in spades last time, if you can start giving it to Brady and him getting 5 and 6 and 7 yards on first down, that is exactly the way the Winnipeg Blue Bombers want to play. And I'm not suggesting they're going to be even close to the 42 minutes time of possession that they had against BC last week. But I'll tell you what, if they can win that time of possession battle, continue to move the chains, and keep Nathan Rourke on the sidelines, that'll be a great start to winning this game, winning the season series against BC, and getting that much closer to being right in the mix, not only for a playoff spot, but for the top of the West.
And to further that, one thing that and all of us noticed, when the Bombers were dominant these last 4 years, they dominated the line of scrimmage. Like offensive line, defensive line, they would rush 4 and they would get tons of pressure on the quarterback. Last week against BC, the Bombers dominated the line of scrimmage in a way that they haven't so far this season. Offensive line, like you said, getting Brady 7-8 yards on first down. And the defensive line had a few sacks of Vernon Adams, lots of pressure. He was running for his life a ton, had to throw the ball away. He was getting pressured, making bad decisions, threw some interceptions. And the D-line played their best game of the season as well. So I think it's both sides of the ball, the trenches. That was something that was the Bombers' kind of bread and butter these last 4 years when they've been so good and made the Grey Cup every single year. It's because Collaros has tons of time to throw and the other team's quarterback doesn't have as much time. This year, it's been the opposite, but last game against BC, you saw a flash of what you've seen in the past, and I think if they can keep that going forward, everything else will click, along with getting healthier, getting Kenny Lawler back. Everything's kind of trending in the right direction. They just need to build off of what they did like 2.5 weeks ago now. Feels like. It's
interesting to see Lucky Whitehead seemingly the odd man out. Yeah. And listen, Lucky, talking about Lucky is interesting because, look, he's such a gregarious personality. He is a guy that fans absolutely love. He lights up the room when he walks in. So he gets a lot of benefit of the doubt. I mean, let's not forget he was basically a backup when the team won the Grey Cup and, was a free agent, going into this season. So it's not like he's maybe 2019 Lucky, but he looked pretty damn good in that game against BC and did everything that he was asked of, including being the one guy that was actually able to get it into the end zone. I will say this, Connor, I'm really intrigued to see what he can bring to the table as a returner this week. The return game has been very, very mid so far this year for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. In fact, maybe less than that. And we have to watch Janarian Grant every time the Toronto Argonauts play do otherworldly things. I'm not sure there's a way that Lucky Whitehead could help this team more than add some oomph into the return game. And I'll tell you what, if he starts feeling it, I don't rule out him getting reps as well with the offense, maybe popping in with just some design plays by Buck Pierce that doesn't have him in on every rep, but when he's in there looking for him and trying to get the ball into his hands like he'll get. We could see Lucky Whitehead actually having more of an impact, playing less on offense and doing it on the returns just with the amount of time he's going to see the football in his hands.
That right there is why I'm not reading into it too much yet. I do want to see how it plays out Sunday, but if Lucky Whitehead's going to return punts and return kicks, and he's going to be in on special occasions in offense and be used as kind of a gadget guy, I think it's fine. I know a lot of people want him in over Josh Johnson at wide receiver, and I get that, but like you said, I think he can make an even bigger impact being the guy in the return game, coming in on first down and catching a fly sweep like Nick Dembski does time and time again, and being kind of fresh legs on the offense. And I think, yes, he played great last week. How sustainable is that? We've seen him do it time and time again, but I think he's best served as a gadget guy to come in and give like defenses a new look. And I'm reserving all of this till Sunday, because if he truly is a backup and he gets 0 reps offensively and he's just strictly a return guy, then I think you got to get him in for at least a few plays and get him the ball because he's got that speed. But I think they will use him in that way. And if they do, I think it'll pay dividends for the rest of their offense, having a guy like that with fresh legs coming in.
Well, and listen, we all know how competitive the football dressing room is. The depth chart is for individuals trying to make their spot, stay in the lineup. The one thing that, that this move does, bringing Kenny Lawler in and having Lucky Whitehead not start, it puts the pressure squarely on the likes of Josh Johnson, Pokey Ontario Wilson to continue, his strong play and reliability. Because if you can't get the job done, it's not like before where they were just trying to find enough guys to get out there and field the roster. You've got guys that are knocking on the door, and if they don't get it done or put the football on the ground or do things that Mike O'Shea doesn't like, you've got a guy in Lucky Whitehead that is waiting for more opportunity. And as I said, made the most of his last week, despite not being a starter this week.
Yeah, I think Ontario Wilson, I said it a few weeks ago with Remus, he is the player that I've been most surprised by, and most Bomber fans have been most surprised by this season. And the last game, he's playing so well. He had that 300-yard game in 4-game stretch. Even one of those games, he had 200 yards. So even though Kenny Lawler's coming back, I'd look for him to remain a big part of the offense, and I hope he does, because he has been so electric with and without the ball in his hands this season. And really, as a rookie, has come in and just kind of taken this receiver group by storm. We talked about it the first couple of weeks. No one was really stepping up. He stepped up and then some, having 13 catches and 200 yards in one game. So I'm really excited to watch those guys, and kind of the healthiest the wide receiver group has maybe been this season, outside of the start of week 1, going into this game against BC with Lawler, Ontario Wilson, where he is now versus week 1, Nick Dembski, Lucky Whitehead coming in for a few plays. Like, they've had more options going into this week and more plays to maybe more fun designed plays to install in practice than they have all season long outside of week 1, when everyone got hurt. So yeah, I'm super pumped for that.
I should make the caveat that they have not put the roster out yet. And
right.
Depending on what happens with practice, we're sort of assuming the way that it has been planned out in practice this week is that Lawler's in and Lucky's going to be returning kicks. But, things can change very quickly. The bottom line is every guy that's getting reps in that Bomber receiver group is going to need to be on notice, because if you're not getting the job done, there's other guys that are ready to go for you. We'll get into more of this with Scott coming up in a few minutes. We do have a really, really intriguing game tonight. Montreal and Saskatchewan. I can't believe that it looks like Cody Fajardo is just going to back up, though he's ready to play. Trevor Harris is back. It'll be really disappointing if we don't get to see Cody in Regina. But I'll tell you what, Bomber fans are certainly going to be pulling for the guy and his team tonight to give one to the Riders. This is a hell of a way to get going with this 8 o'clock start tonight.
Do you think he plays at all? Or no? You think he actually plays on the bench the whole game?
No, I can't possibly imagine that. Like, and
I
to be
can't
honest,
either. Yeah.
I've been watching this line move from 1 for Saskatchewan to 2 for Montreal, and it certainly would indicate people are liking Montreal's chances. And listen, Davis Alexander has been really good. He hasn't lost, but I mean, Cody was right there with VA for the way that he played. As I said, it's like he made some sort of deal with a higher power with 3 minutes left in the Grey Cup, and it's still kind of continuing on right now. And they haven't had to rush him back, which is great. They've got the awesome record. But this is a game you'd have to think that Cody wants to be in and playing right now. So if I had to bet, I think we do see him at times. I don't know whether Moss is maybe just playing games with everybody by not technically starting, but if he's ready to go, how do you not put your top guy in?
Yeah, I think we see him tonight. I know he's the backup, and I know he's saying that he's not going to play and all those things, but no, the story is too juicy for the CFL. Coming back to Saskatchewan for the first time as a Grey Cup champ, and this is a big game. Like, Saskatchewan is the top team in the West, so Montreal going in there, it's going to be should be a great crowd. I know Saskatchewan's had some issues so far this year, but with the Cody Fajardo, kind of uncertainty, not really sure if that'll drive some ticket sales. If he was the starter, I think it might have a little bit more. But I do think we see Fajardo at some point tonight, and I'm super excited to see how the game shakes out. Because if Alexander comes out in the first quarter and is lighting it up, then yeah, we won't see Fajardo. But if he struggles, maybe Saskatchewan takes a 14-0 lead in the first quarter, nice and early, maybe you do see Cody Fajardo come in and try and attempt a comeback or something like that. But I'm super pumped for this game. It's going to be great between two of the best teams in the CFL.
It's just a head scratcher. I mean, if Zach Caleros missed a month and he's coming back, okay, he's ready to go, he's playing, he's going to play. He's not going to be the backup. You're going to give him the football and get right back to it. So anyways, regardless of who's playing at quarterback, go Alouettes for tonight's game. Give the Riders another loss, and let's tighten up this Western Division a little bit more. We're going to bring in Scotty Billeck right away from the Winnipeg Sun. I mentioned right off the top, CFL 110's available for you, the latest edition on the Winnipeg Sports Talk YouTube. And, of course, CFL 110's brought to you by our friends at Garage Living Winnipeg. The push is on, gang. If you want to have a clean, organized garage this fall before the snow flies, give Garage Living Winnipeg a call at 999-1234. It's been a great, productive summer for the guys at Garage Living, transforming dozens of garages in and around the city. Now they're gearing up for a busy fall as the push is on to get clients booked, garages designed, and installations complete before the winter. Don't miss your chance to clear the clutter, organize, and beautify your garage with polyaspartic floor coating, premium made-in-Canada metal cabinetry, and slat wall storage solutions, not to mention the ability to put in lifts so you can work on your car or your sled in the comfort and warmth of your beautiful garage. Check out their website at garageliving.com or call our friend Pat Kanuga. He's loving his shift from early morning radio guy to garage designer. You can give Pat a buzz at 999-1234 for a chat about what can be done in your garage. Maybe make an appointment to meet him as well down at their showroom at 981 Main Street. Garage Living Winnipeg. Garages made for living. Got to shout our friends out over at Roley's Transfer, gang. If you have a move coming up, we know how stressful that can be. Give your precious belongings the white glove treatment from the most trusted name in moving, Roley's Transfer, family owned and operated for 60 years right here in Winnipeg. The guys at Roley's, they have an extensive logistics business which takes them throughout Winnipeg and southern Manitoba on a daily basis, which means flexible routes and timing, and of course, great prices on your move from the most trusted name around. What you're going to want to do is go to Roley's.com, check out their great new website. Right in the top right corner, you can see the request a quote feature. Let them know where and when you're moving and what you're moving, and they'll turn it around with a great quote. And by the way, WST listeners can take advantage of a special deal with a discount on moving services and supplies by using the promo code WST when you go to Roley's.com and request a quote. Again, promo code WST for your next move. Make it Roley's, the most trusted name in moving here in Manitoba for over 60 years. Consolidated Supply, busy summer right now. Listen, the golf season's in full swing, probably on the back nine, if you will. But they're the irrigation experts for the golf industry and, of course, for both residential and commercial customers throughout Manitoba. But they've got much more than irrigation. They're also the experts in artificial turf, if you want to put that dream putting green in the backyard. And, of course, golf carts as the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba. They've also got some other great options for your property, though. Hot tubs, amazing, really cool outdoor kitchen options. And, of course, they are the leaders in small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see them, Consolidated Supply, at their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online on everything they've got going on at cte.ca. And as we get ready for another weekend, don't forget, you got to have your batteries ready to go. And for batteries of all shapes, all sizes, all needs, there's only one place you need to go, and that is Manitoba Battery, now with 2 locations, one on Logan Avenue and the new one on Dover Court. Manitoba Battery allows you to shop local, get the best prices in town, period, beating the pants off the big box stores with the best service in town, as well as Donnie and the gang will deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter for any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. Pop by and see him in person, give him a call, or order online today at manitobabattery.com. All right, it's Friday. Let's welcome in Scott Billeck from the Winnipeg Sun as we head into the weekend. Scott, what's good, buddy? How are you?
It's going, dude. Enjoying my first week holidays is coming to the end. So got one more to go, though, so I'm still good. I feel
Any
like I'm
highlights?
just finally...
Any highlights?
None at all. The highlights have been just
video
doing
games.
nothing. I've been playing a few video games. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. There's been a little bit of that. A little bit of just dealing with some parental health stuff, and but yeah, no. Other than that, just doing life, trying to rely. I find that like after the first week gets closer to the end, that's when I start to actually finally relax for once, and so. I'm looking forward to next week where I will just actually
We're getting
relax.
Max Chill Billeck in the middle of holidays still joining us. We appreciate you jumping on. Listen, you've been doing a lot of the Bomber beat lately, and what a wild week, not necessarily for the Bombers, but everything surrounding this game on Sunday with the return of Nathan Rourke. That sure happened fast.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I think that was always going to be the landing spot for him, right? But you always wondered because you're like, well, Vernon Adams is playing pretty well, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good for them. It's obviously good for BC. I had this like thought. I was like, well, like I know the season's been whatever for the Bombers, and they're not going to ever give up on Zach Claros. But do you wonder if they would take a shot at a guy like that to kind of consolidate their future, especially with hosting the Grey Cup next year? Not saying that they're moving away from Zach. I'm not saying anything like that, but I do wonder if they poked around at that at all. But I just think BC is the easy option for him. He knows it. He knows the system, knows the coaches. Not going to be too much of an issue to go in. And look at that, he's going in, right? So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And Derek Taylor I think he tweeted it out yesterday or not, like. He's been very good at certain types of passes and that sort of thing. And you wonder, is this guy a flash in the pan? Was he a flash in the pan in the CFL, or was he legit? I don't know if tomorrow's game Sunday's game, will tell us that. But I think it's an interesting thing. Like, we're going to see now what Nathan Rourke is made of. He hasn't played CFL football in a couple of years now, right? So it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how he kind of reintegrates himself into this game and see, what he can do. Because towards the end of that time of his rookie season in the CFL, teams were starting to figure him out when we remember that West Final with the Bombers, right? So I'm curious to see how that plays out, but it's obviously it's big news for BC. You see, I think it's really good for BC. You see BC opening up the upper deck at BC Place there. It's nice to see another CFL market doing well and selling a lot of tickets, and especially in a big place BC Place is massive, right? So that's really cool too. It's good for that market. They know that guy. They can get behind him. He's Canadian, right? Like, there's all these things. So yeah, it's a good story for the league, right? I mean, it's a good story for the Canadian game to have him back here. And yeah, we'll see how he does against one of the. I mean, I would argue the best defenses in the CFL right now, just based on the last game, how they were able to completely shut down arguably the best quarterback in the game that was at least healthy that week. And yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see. It should be a really good game. And can the Bombers, and with Calgary losing last night, right? I mean, that's a big deal for the standings. The Bombers can move into third, but they also, if they lose and Edmonton finds a way to win, now the Bombers the Elks have caught right up to the Bombers. So yeah, it's a pivot. I don't want to call it pivotal weekend, but it's a big weekend for the Bombers because stringing together another win would really help their chances at the playoffs. And
well, you're exactly like if the Bombers can beat BC and Montreal can win tonight, we would be talking about a division with 4 teams separated by a game. 5 wins for Saskatchewan, 5 wins for BC. Sask does have the tie, so there's, I guess, a half game up. And the Bombers can
But the Bombers would have the tie on the BC, right? Like, so, like, this is an interesting situation. Yeah.
Well, a huge game for Winnipeg because if they do win, they get to within 1 game of BC, and then they would also have the season series and the tiebreaker, which they have on Calgary, which you correctly noted. The Bombers do move into a playoff spot with a win no matter what after Calgary's loss last night. What was fascinating about the Rourke deal was just how quickly that it happened. And I'm sort of with you as well. Like, I don't think that there would have been any conversations with many of the other teams like a potential Bombers right now. But if Rourke played out the rest of the season trying to make the NFL, and then at the end of the year decided, okay, I'm coming back to the CFL, you've got a bidding war amongst all these teams, which is great business by Amar Doman to get him done, to get it inked to the season. And as Farhan mentioned, they might sell enough extra tickets for this game on Sunday since he was signed to cover the $250K he's getting this year. The fact of the matter is, though, they avoid any sort of bidding war with the rest of the league. And in this season, as much as it sort of sucks for Vernon Adams, it does give them an incredible 1-2 punch at quarterback. And right now, Scott, the Calgary Stampeders are the only team that started the same guy throughout the year. All other 8 teams have gone to their backup at some point. Listen, it's a long season. Guys get hurt. You need both your quarterbacks. And listen, what a luxury they have with VA right now, projected to be the backup once he gets off the IR.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, BC, I think everybody across the CFL land has written about it this week in my readings that I've done, talking about, you have look at that is an incredible it's incredible depth that you have in the CFL. Very few teams, almost in every team when you're not, I mean, Montreal has obviously kind of bucked that trend a little bit this year too, but anytime your top quarterback goes out, and in the CFL, usually in almost all, like in a lot of football, not just CFL, NFL too, whatever, right? Your best quarterback, your number 1 quarterback goes out, usually your team suffers. I mean, we saw that when BC was in here the last time. We saw that 2 weeks ago, or last week, I guess, with BC starting. I can never get his last name right, but they're back up there before Rourke came. That's it. And so, it's you have the ability. I mean, to me, it's sort of like it's a more skilled kind of 1-2 punch than Collaros and Streveler. Like, we know what Streveler does, but I think that you can use both quarterbacks at times. Like, I think you can get really creative if you want to, using both of those guys. I mean, we've seen Zach Collaros line up at wide receiver before, with Streveler behind center, right? So it affords you the ability to do some of those things, right? And sometimes you just need one of those players to go off in a game, and that's the deciding factor, right? And teams, it's hard to prep for stuff like that. It's hard to scheme against that. So, it's a huge 1-2, as you said. Huge for depth, huge for injuries, just in case one happened. And if one guy struggles, you can move to the next guy, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be the one guy is going, the one guy, whatever. Like, you can ride the hot hand if you have to. And BC's in a spot right now where they got to win, right? I mean, they've been great at home, which is not good for the Bombers this week, who haven't won on the road. BC hasn't lost at home yet, and Winnipeg hasn't won away from Princess Auto Stadium. But BC hasn't played very well in the last few weeks, and it's shown. Obviously, losing Vernon Adams was a problem for them, but they've slowed down a little bit after a really hot start. So it's important. It's very important for the Bombers to come out this week, knock off whatever kind of bye week rust or whatever. And I think this team needed the rest more than it needed to keep going at the time. But it's a huge opportunity for all this talk about Nathan Rourke. And one way you can shut all that talk up is by going out and absolutely, stomping a bit of a mud hole, as Stone Cold used to say, into the BC Lions, and especially into their offense, which they
did a couple weeks ago.
Exactly.
And listen, the defense, I mean, you're not getting another shutout. That would be unreasonable. But they've been playing. They've been giving the Blue Bombers chances to win, especially away from home. I mean, the Regina game, the Toronto game, the defense did everything you need to win those football games. And that's why, as much as all the focus is going to be on Nathan Rourke for obvious reasons, I'm quite interested to see how this Bomber offense can look. And I think Zach Collaros, listen, first things first, win the football game. They're professionals. Mm-hmm. That's what they're going to do. But if you got the defense playing the way that it is right now, Brady Oliveira is running the football the way that he is. Sergio Castillo's been awesome, but I don't know if you want him kicking 6 field goals in a game. Like, Kenny Lawler's back.
Because you know what that means,
You've got some competition at the receiver position. Time to get some sixes up right now. And I think that Zach in particular going to be very, very motivated to do exactly that. And as I said before with Connor, with Lawler back in the lineup and Lucky Whitehead moving to the return position, if anyone's not getting it done, Lucky's going to be ready to jump in right away. And I think that competition within the receiver group hopefully can bring out some better results amongst the passing game.
I don't know if there's a prop bet out there on Zach Collaros tossing a bomb to Kenny Lawler on first down on the opening drive, Winnipeg's opening drive of Sunday's game, but I would put money on that bet. That's where I think that's going. So we'll see. But I'm sure I'm not big on the betting scene, so I don't know if they have those types of things, but I would lay my money on that, because I think they're gonna try and send a message right away with Kenny Lawler and get him kind of back into the mix. But yeah, I mean, I think Kenny Lawler coming back is huge, and it's huge for a couple of reasons. Obviously, the guy's incredibly skilled, right? We know what he can do. He catches nearly everything that's thrown his way. But he's really good safety net too for Zach Collaros. And one of the things that's been missing with Wolodarski and especially Schoen and especially Lawler has been when these routes have broken down or Zach's been flushed out of the pocket. And I've been talking about this for a while, but this team used to be very good at when things broke down offensively in terms of the plays that they were running. Those guys knew, both of those guys, especially Lawler and Schoen, knew exactly where to go, where Zach would be able to find them to salvage something out of the play. Oftentimes it was first down, sometimes it was big plays, etc. So that's a huge thing for the Bombers this week, especially for their offense. And I think it's just that familiarity, right? I like you look at Pokey. I was going to say Pokey Reddick. That's an old one for the kids in the chat.
Look him up, kids.
You might have to Google who Pokey Reddick is.
Where's the
Pokey?
bandit?
Yeah, exactly. But for Pokey Wilson, Ontario Wilson, if you look at his stats have been incredible. They've been very good. I think he's at 575 yards, 30-odd catches, and obviously a couple touchdowns now. But I think there's been a little bit. So this just, in my opinion, this opens up. This offense could finally sort of use its weapons, right? Like, obviously the weapons had sort of been kind of they've been disarmed a little bit, but I think now this team can sort of start exploiting some of the matchups that they're going to have. I think we know what obviously what Wilson can do. We know exactly what Kenny Lawler can do, and so these are very good things for the offense, and we've seen. We saw it, and the defense did it quicker. Like, the defense got better and better as the season went along. The first half of this year went along. I think we've seen, I don't want to say maybe the last, the Saskatchewan game wasn't great, but there's been flashes on offense for several weeks now. But the last couple weeks, or at least the last time out against BC, you kind of started again going, and you've seen Brady Oliveira. He's been churning it out. He's been putting out. I think he's got 32 catches already this year. He had 38 last year. So halfway through the season, he's on pace to smash that. There's so many checkdowns, right? So maybe that'll change a little bit. But I think the offense and Brady has been a big part of that. They've found a way, at least to start, not losing games, let's say. And I think now the next step is to start, and you'll have Lawler back, and again, a big addition back to this lineup. They can start to kind of exploit a little bit of the matchups that they have. Start running. I think Buck can open up the playbook a little bit more. Although I still think he could have still did it a little bit more before. But yeah, no, I think it's a good thing for this offense. And I just, if you're a Bombers fan, you hope that they come out and they start again from the spot that they ended against BC, because that's where this offense is like, that's sort of like the cusp of this offense starting to go off. And now with Lawler back, and we'll see what happens with Wolodarski or where he'll be at some point. I think there's this defense is good enough that and I don't want to call it an average, but just a better than average offense can carry this team a long way.
It's as long as they don't beat themselves. Like, listen.
Well, that's the thing. The no fumbles. And that was the big thing against. Exactly.
If you run the football the way they've been running the football, you play defense anywhere close to the way they've been over the last month. And at that point, like, you don't need to do a lot. However, if this team is going to challenge in the West, if they're going to be, a Grey Cup contender, they're going to need to get more out of the offense. And I think they've been waiting for Kenny Lawler to come back, and it will be very interesting to see how things look. Sunday night, 6 p.m. start. By the way, Bombing and Walby will be going live at noon tomorrow, I believe, from the folks in the chat. So if you're looking for more on the Bombers and Darren and Walby, check out the Bonfire show any point tomorrow afternoon or right into the game. You mentioned exploiting weaknesses there in that last bit. What did you think about the St. Louis Blues exploiting the cap weakness of the Edmonton Oilers earlier this week with the double offer sheet, Billeck?
I love it. I've been pounding this drama for years. I don't know what GMs are doing, right? There's so much opportunity in this offer sheet market to make it. Is there really though? I think there is. I just don't think GMs
this was a unique situation. I thought. Like, how many other teams are in the situation Edmonton's in? Like, you try to do that to Cole Perfetti, it takes them 2 seconds to match the offer.
100%.
Right? Edmonton can't.
100%. I totally get it. But you put teams, you make teams think about it, right? Like, you make them think about it. Edmonton can figure it out, but then they got it. It makes a team figure it out. It also shows that your team is willing to, and that player is willing to sign for your team, right? And so, we saw it with Kotkaniemi. I know it hasn't worked out necessarily for that for Carolina when they did it. We saw it with Sebastian Aho. It didn't work out, but it certainly put Montreal put Carolina in a bit of a bind there to do it. And I just don't think it does any sort of ill will. I don't think GMs hold that grudge because you just can't in this league. The league's too small, and sometimes you need players, and you just can't. I think there's a market here to do it. I just don't know. Well, not every player wants to move off from where they are, right? But I think I don't think that players necessarily, or maybe even agents or even GMs. Well, GMs can exploit it too. I just don't think they've explored that market as much as they could. And trust me, or not trust. Like, I get it. It's expensive, right? Like, if you look at those deals that St. Louis did, they're brilliant because they don't give up a lot for two very good players. But the higher you go, the way more that you have to give up. It's difficult to do. But if there's an RFA out there that you want and you can promise opportunity to and all that, I always thought. I mean, it's not like Kevin Cheveldayoff makes a lot of deals to begin with. I always wondered if that would be the one thing that he could try a little bit more of, right? I mean, it's hard to bring RFAs here, but if you're an RFA, you can pay them a little bit more. You can offer, and you can probably offer a better opportunity than some of these guys. I've always just wondered. I'd love to talk to a GM more in depth about it because, there's things that I'm not seeing that obviously I'm sure all these GMs have looked at it. I just wonder. I don't. To answer your question, I love it. I love a little bit of summer drama when there's an offer sheet, and I love it when the players sign them because I think the players. I mean, at the end of the day, the players get to. They're the ones that they're the ones that have to sign on it, right? Like they're the ones that have to.
Did you hear what the asks were from those players to Edmonton?
Well, yeah,
Elliot Friedman reported Broberg was wanting 1.8. He ends up getting more than 4.5 from St. Louis, and Holloway was looking for 1.2 and got basically 2.3. Like part of it is you're drastically inflating the salaries, and that will be an issue. If they keep these guys and then they have to qualify them, they'll be qualifying them at this crazily inflated number. But listen, it is somewhat of a stroke of genius, and I've mentioned this a couple times this week. I'm quite interested as to how much of this was initiated by St. Louis and how much of this might have been initiated by the agents. Because when you think about what Edmonton has done, Edmonton is sitting there and they go and sign all of those guys on July 1st. And if I'm the agent for Broberg or Holloway, I'm going like, well, wait a second. You're spending to the cap already. What are you going to do? Jam us with $1 million a year to keep us in the system? Like, no, that's not cutting it. So, listen, Broberg said he wasn't going to do a deal during the season, and it made sense for him. He was in the minors most of the year. The guy's only played 81 NHL games. But he had a strong playoffs. He boosted his stock, and then the Oilers put themselves in a position that they couldn't come anywhere close to meeting their demand, and it's worked out quite well. I mean, he's going to get almost a $3 million raise on what he was asking just because of the situation that he was in. Jamie McLennan was on TSN a couple days ago, and Andy Strickland from St. Louis was on WST. Both of them said that there is zero chance that this transaction takes place if Ken Holland is still the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers because of how close Armstrong and Holland are. Do you buy that?
Is this just? I think so, right? Because I think there is. I wonder how much this is a big FU to Stan Bowman, right? Like I wonder how much this was exactly what it is. Like I mean, it's not like Rutherford and Bowman don't remember each other from before in the Central Division, right? Like we're not that far removed from those rivalries all those years. I don't know how those two like each other. I have no clue. But I think, I mean, if we go to just St. Louis and what I've read on St. Louis is they've been looking, especially on defense, to kind of shake up their defensive core a little bit. And so Broberg makes a lot of sense for them. Yeah, I mean, it's a.
I wonder if Ken Holland got in Armstrong's ear all pissed off at the way he was handled. Maybe, the fact that they were moving on from him no matter what.
And well, you got to think, right? You got to think, Huss, that Rutherford picked up the phone Armstrong. Sorry, I keep saying Rutherford. Armstrong picked up the phone and said, "Hey, what do you think of these two guys?" Right? But I think St. Louis saw an opportunity and they're taking it. And you have a bit of money to throw around. You have opportunity for those players to play, probably in prominent roles for both of them. Make it happen, right? I think it's a savvy move by a GM who wasn't able to he hasn't really been able to fix his problems by let's call them conventional means. And now he's going a different route. And you put another team in a bind, but you also give yourself an opportunity. And you give yourself an opportunity at a very low cost. I thought, like the Holloway one, I think, was it a third round pick is the compensation? you do that in a heartbeat, right?
Yeah,
Like, I
a
mean,
third
I
and
don't
a
think
second.
a third and a, yeah, whatever. I mean,
The
again,
seconds for Broberg, thirds for a Holloway.
yeah, and I
And
think
they
you would do that
basically
all
paid
day
them
long.
right up to the threshold.
Yeah, and you would do that all day long, right? Like, and I think anybody in this league, everybody in this league would offer a third round pick and a second round for both those players in a heartbeat, right? And so that's all you're doing here, right? And I again, I think agents, I'm surprised we haven't seen this more. And I suppose you don't, but I mean, it's never hurt Kurt Overhart to be that sort of agent who goes and, he can be looked at as a dick or whatever and all that, but at the end of the day, he gets his players where they want to be and what kind of money they want, right? What does it matter if you're an agent that plays hardball in a different way? I don't understand that. And if you're a GM in that situation, or you're in a GM in a unique situation where it's hard to always attract people like it is in Winnipeg or, Columbus or markets like that, right? I think it's another tool that you can use. And you're going to piss people off along the way, but does it really matter in the end? Like, you're trying to win a championship. You're not trying to be friends with everybody. So I like it. I love it. I love the idea of it. I love it when it happens because it's just, it doesn't have to be this big old friendly, kumbaya between GMs and all that. It can be,
the
hey,
thing is,
I'm
like,
trying to be better than you.
I'm with you. I mean, it would be great if we saw a bunch of these, and like every year, the insiders tell us,
I think it'd
"Watch
be
out,
bad
there's
for
going to be a
Winnipeg,
couple
though,
offers."
right?
Yeah,
I think it would just be bad for Winnipeg. Like, I think that's the other edge of this double-edged sword, right? Is that teams like
but I don't
Winnipeg
know.
have a tough time. You'd see it a bit more.
Well, the thing is, it doesn't matter because if you're like the Jets, who have kind of managed their cap well, they're in zero
Sure,
danger of
yes.
losing their player. Like let's not forget that these teams have the right to match. Like, if anything, the other teams almost do your work for you. Then you're like, okay, thanks very much. We're signing the guy,
Yeah.
which is why Edmonton was such a unique spot and why we don't see it more. Like, the other teams, like, yeah, go ahead, try it. We're matching in a heartbeat. Edmonton had some real tough decisions. And this next week, I mean, they've got 7 days to do it. It's been very quiet. I'm sure they're exhausting all of their other options around the league as to what they might be able to do to move. Because, I mean, losing even one of your top two young players for a team that, frankly, is as old as the Oilers are, and you look at the rest of their roster, not what you want for this window during the McDavid and Draisaitl era, even assuming those guys go. Not to mention, those guys and Bouchard need extra contracts. So, like, do you think they'll – I think the most likely thing probably is keeping Holloway and having to say goodbye to Broberg. But, like, how do you see this play out? If you had to bet right now, when we find out at the 7-day mark, what do they do?
I was trying to figure out and I haven't looked at their cap situation, but is Evander Kane still on their books right now? Like, I know there's been a lot of talk. So it was funny that stuff came out, like, I think it was a day after they announced that Evander Kane likely might not be ready for the start of the season. And so if that's the case, well, then you might be able to sign them both and just put Evander's, whatever, I don't know what Evander's making, like 5 something.
But the thing is, he still has to be on the roster, counting on the cap on the first day of the season, right?
Yeah, but you can manipulate that stuff, right? Like, you can manipulate the LTIR to make sure it works. If I'm not mistaken, I'd have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure you can put the guy. Like, where did Evander leave off at the end of last year? He didn't play in the finals, right? He didn't play in Game 7. Like, he didn't.
No.
I'm trying to remember.
He didn't play in the last 3. Or the last 4
but that's
games.
on LTIR.
I think when they were down.
So he didn't end this season on LTIR because that was So I don't know. That's a good question. No, they're gonna have to.
I did call right after they signed Henrique and Arvidsson and all those guys. I'm like, Evander Kane's going on LTIR, and that was before they had these inflated prices. So, anyways, it's going to be really interesting. Scotty,
or
enjoy the Bomber
get somebody
game.
Cheap, right? Somebody's going to get somebody cheap off the Edmonton Oilers roster. That might be what happens too this week.
Teams might be getting a pick or two to take a player off Edmonton now, if that's what they feel they need to do it. Not a great situation. Welcome back to the NHL, Stan Bowman. Deal with this.
That's right.
Have a great weekend, man. Thanks for doing this.
You will. Yeah. Sounds good, man. We'll see you later.
Great chat with Scott. Of course, we hit plenty on the Bombers, 6 p.m. on Sunday on the road, and then back at Princess Auto Stadium next week. on Friday for what should be a fun 90s night at the stadium. Of course, Princess Auto, proud sponsor of the Bombers, their home Princess Auto Stadium, and Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, Princess Auto is founded and headquartered right here in Winnipeg, proudly Manitoban, with 2 locations in the city, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Of course, you can also shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. The weekend's here. We'll cheers you all with a Canadian club. And of course, if you're heading out of town, getting ready for a fun weekend, make sure you pop by your local Manitoba liquor marts if you're stopping by and check out all of the great Beam Suntory products, including your favorite Canadian whiskey, Canadian Club, Canada's original. As you can see on the screen, it's going to be hot this weekend. Maybe being on the beach and the golf course, try the new Canadian Club pre-mixed cocktail, CC and ginger ale. That's available in cans at your local liquor mart, as well as your local beer store next time you're going in to grab a case. Big thanks to Canadian Club, the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Hopefully you'll be enjoying the weekend as opposed to doing things like, building a new fence. If you've got fencing needs, don't do it yourself. Take it to the experts at Wallace & Wallace, the leaders in fencing and overhead doors since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter did a number on your old one, give them a call. They got vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And if you need a garage door, they also have Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. 452-2700 is the number. A member of the Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. And speaking of September, moving on, the season will be changing. Might be needing to dress it up a little bit more. Guys, if you're looking into your closet and realize you need to up your menswear game, get on down to F Apparel at 190 Smith Street. Custom suits beginning at $400, chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and the biggest and best selection of menswear accessories in town. They're at 190 Smith Street. Don't forget about that 15% discount for wedding parties if you have a wedding coming up or in a wedding party. And of course, you can go check them out online as well at EPHapparel.com for more info on all their promos and, of course, to book a fitting. All right. Hacksaw coming up. Connor will be back. We'll get to the cool bet lines. We will get down to marbles. But right now, let's get ready for UFC 305 on the weekend with the one and only Aaron Bronsteter. All right, let's welcome in our pal Aaron Bronsteter from Sportsnet to get ready for a big UFC 305 card this week down under. Aaron, what's going on? How are you?
I'm good, Hustler. Thank you for having me on.
It is always great to catch up with you. And hey, first off, congratulations. Seems like every time we have you on, you're nominated for another award. Just in the past couple of weeks, nominated for Journalist of the Year for the Fighters Only World MMA Awards. Congratulations on that. And how can we help you win this award? Is there fan voting for this?
I was going to say, you're making me sound like Daniel Day-Lewis here. Like, this is the only award I'm ever nominated for. I'm not nominated for, like, Tony Awards or Clio Awards or anything along those lines. But, yeah, you can go to... not yet. I'm still hoping for the EGOT. But you can go to worldmmaawards.com, and it's fan voting. So make sure you just go through all the awards. And if you only want to vote on one category, you can vote on Journalist of the Year for me. And then you can just check all the other boxes randomly. And I've just got to say, don't register a bunch of email addresses. I keep telling people this. Only one per person. Like, I wouldn't want people to try to game the system here. So let's just remember, one entry per person.
Folks, give him a follow on X at Aaron Bronsteter. You'll see the pinned tweet right there if you want to. Only one per person again, as Aaron said, but please.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want anybody getting in trouble for registering like 30 accounts and voting for me. Like, that just is not in the spirit of the voting.
Definitely not. We got a big card this week. I mean, it's been an interesting summer. There's some other stories in and around MMA, but we've been waiting a while for Izzy Adesanya to get back into the octagon against Dricus du Plessis. They were supposed to fight, when was that, about a year ago or so? And it's finally coming to pass this weekend.
Yeah, they were supposed to face off. Well, it was never really signed, but the expectation was that they would fight in September last year. That card was in, I believe, Melbourne, Australia, and instead Dracus got injured and didn't really want to take the fight on. I guess without having a good camp. It's his one opportunity to fight for the championship, so you got to understand where he's coming from. Ends up fighting Sean Strickland, and Strickland has probably, I think he was like a 7-1 underdog, ends up winning the championship. So it's been a little bit of a merry-go-round to get to where we are today.
Yeah, well, we'll get to Strickland in a minute, because he is, at this point, he seems sort of like half legit UFC star and half, I don't know, social media bleep disturber, if you know what I mean.
Fringe weird.
As far as Adesanya, is he still one of the top draws in the sport?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that Israel, his fighting style is very aesthetically pleasing. He's good on the mic, marketable, fashionable, very kind of a different guy, pretty enigmatic. And I think that's what makes him stand out among the fighters. So it's good to have him back. And it's weird. I've covered the sport for a long time, and I keep saying this, but he's been out for 11 months, and it feels like 3 years. Because he's just always been so active. I think he said at the press conference this morning, 5 championship fights in 16 months. That's an outrageous number to have under your belt. And him being up for 11 months, you compare 16 months, 5 title fights, and then 0 fights in 11 months. That's why I think it feels like it's been such a long time since we've seen him compete.
How important of a fight is this for him? I mean, we mentioned he is a huge box office star, but to get the title back and to be back on top, I mean, this is sort of where we assume Izzy's going to be, and that hasn't been the case for the last year.
Yeah, it would be somewhat historic, right? Because he'd have won the same championship belt on 3 different occasions after dropping it twice. Nobody has had that happen in the same division. I know Randy Couture had 3 different championship reigns, I think, spread out between light heavyweight and heavyweight. But in the modern era, at least of the UFC, we haven't really seen a champion drop his title on 2 occasions and then win it back. I think that would be a pretty interesting thing to see happen. He's only 35 years old. We're at the middleweight division. That's kind of your prime. So he could certainly win it back and look good doing so. But Dracus du Plessis has not lost a middleweight fight in 10 years since he was 20 years of age. And he's looked great, hasn't lost a fight in the UFC. So I'm excited to see what Dracus brings to the table in his first title defense. He's been a very exciting fighter, very well-rounded fighter, something of almost like winning in sloppy fashion, but that's kind of what his technique is. He's just very herky-jerky. You don't really know what to predict from him. He's kind of hittable, but at the same time, he also has big power. He's got good takedowns, good submissions. So it's going to be an interesting puzzle for Israel to solve.
How big of an underdog was Adesanya when he fought Strickland? Or a favorite,
or vice versa. Yeah, I think he was like a minus 900 favorite, something along those lines. He was a massive favorite, like one of the bigger championship favorites, I think, in UFC history in the men's divisions.
And what about du Plessis when he went against Strickland?
So that was pretty much an even money fight. I think Dracus was a small underdog, maybe like plus 125, plus 135. And for this fight, it's just about even money. I think a little bit of juice on Israel right now at minus 125, minus 130, something along those lines. So close to even fight. And it's funny, when these guys were supposed to be facing each other, I looked this up yesterday. Last year, Israel opened up as a minus 330 favorite. So what's changed? Israel's lost 1 fight. Dracus has won 1 fight. Israel's 1 fight removed from beating Alex Pereira, who right now is the number 2 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. So it's kind of interesting that, in just 11 months, the narrative has shifted so much.
Well, let me ask you this. You mentioned pound for pound. I mean, in the landscape of the sport, where do du Plessis and Adesanya right now, in your mind, rank on the pound for pound chart?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because, Israel lost to Strickland, so that certainly, kills some of the illusion behind him. But I still think Israel's a top 10 pound for pound guy, and I think I would say the same about du Plessis. Du Plessis used to be a welterweight as well. He came to the UFC and has been fighting at middleweight ever since. But I think you have to respect what du Plessis has done since he's come to the UFC.
I was catching up on the behind the scenes show that they kind of, if you will, paint the picture for the fight on Sportsnet earlier this week, and I'm trying to figure out whether the bad blood was sort of manufactured for the show and part of the sales job, or whether there is some legitimate bad blood between these two guys getting into the octagon.
Well, there's some history when it comes to their lineage. So, Dracus is has said that he's the real African champion in the UFC because he's the only champion that continues to train in Africa, in South Africa, particularly for him. And Israel has really taken exception to that because, he's obviously lived in New Zealand for much of his life, but at the same time, born in Nigeria, proud of his Nigerian roots. And you have champions like Kamaru Usman, born in Nigeria, Francis Ngannou, when he was in the UFC, born in Cameroon. So Drake is calling himself the real African champion, really has struck a chord with Israel. And a lot of the other fighters, mind you, from Africa that we have in the UFC right now have kind of taken exception to Drake is saying this. But, Drake does still train in South Africa. So I think that he's kind of using that as a way of, I guess, maybe generating some heat. But I think also in his mind that he believes that to be true, that he is the lone champion that's still, or even UFC fighter at a high level that trains on African soil. So that's kind of struck a chord with Israel.
I mean, you follow this, and I know you're mainly covering it as a journalist, but just as a guy that follows it, I mean, where are you leaning? Because there's so many intriguing angles to this fight, and as you mentioned, it's relatively close if you're going to put a nickel on it.
Yeah, man. Like this is, it's funny. I was on my friend Dan Tom's show yesterday, and we just break down the matchups and the betting. And I said, like, I'm a bad guest to have on about this main event because to me, it's just almost like a total pass. It's like an even money fight. You've got a guy on an 11-month layoff who's used to fighting regularly, but also, again, one fight removed from beating Alex Pereira, seemingly rejuvenated. And then you've got a guy like Dricus Du Plessis who's pretty hittable, but at the same time, Dricus Du Plessis also has very good wrestling. He's shown the ability to mix up his striking and wrestling well. He's got big power. So it's really a difficult fight to call and to pin down because I think that it's a very even fight. I think that Israel has probably the best way to win, which is on the feet, but I think that Dracus has more ways to win, and that's what makes it kind of interesting. To me, I think the value play on this particular fight is Du Plessis winning by submission at plus 600. I think that he did a great job of mixing in takedowns against Sean Strickland, and Sean Strickland has been a guy that's been notoriously pesky to take down. But anybody who Israel's fought that's a semi-decent wrestler has been able to take him down, and in the case of Jan Błachowicz, even control him. So I think that if there are going to be some scrambles in this fight, Dracus by submission, I think, is a pretty live play at plus 600 if you're looking for kind of a sneaky prop for this fight.
Well, and in a way, I mean, I guess that's sort of where he'll be looking to go at. Like saying that a guy is somewhat hittable going up against a guy like Adesanya doesn't seem to be a recipe for success on the surface.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that while his striking is good, the path of least resistance is going to be the wrestling if he can get it there. And Dracus has shown a propensity to do that. I think, again, 6 takedowns against Sean Strickland is no joke. I think that that's a difficult thing to achieve. Took down Robert Whittaker, who's a great wrestler and was like an Australian national wrestler at the Commonwealth Games. So he certainly has the skills to take Israel down. And if he does that, I think that if we're seeing situations where Israel's trying to get back to his feet, some scrambles, that's where Du Plessis, who has a lot of rear naked choke victories under his belt earlier in his career, that's something he could certainly snap up.
So, Aaron, this event is in Perth, Australia. We have long-running jokes on this show about time zones dating back to the Paul Maurice era here, where he never stopped talking about them. But we're talking halfway around the world. How does this work for North American fans? Is it going to be at the same time? And if so, what does that mean for the actual show going on down under?
Yes, they're keeping it at American prime time, so 10 p.m. main card start. And I believe it's a 12-hour difference. So, like, the prelims are going to start at 6:30 a.m. in Perth. So people are going to be there early in the morning with their big cans of Foster ready to go. But you look at the time difference, and I think that it makes a difference for these fighters because it's hard to kind of get up. And I think that might have been the case for Israel last time against Strickland. It's 10:30 a.m. or sorry, probably closer to like 11:30 a.m. when these guys walk to the cage for the main event. It's going to feel like it's right in the morning, right? So there is an adjustment curve for some of these fighters as well to get used to this time change. But I think that does make it interesting for sure.
Yeah, it reminds me, what was the event that just happened over in, I believe it was in Great Britain? Was it boxing or UFC?
Manchester.
Where
it was UFC,
where it
and it was in the middle of the night.
Went until 6 a.m.
Yeah, that was the last UFC pay-per-view was in Manchester. 10 p.m. main card start here, which equates to a 3 a.m. main card start there. You have people in Manchester in the middle of the night watching these fights.
Of course, shockingly, everyone got loaded and there was a big brouhaha at the end of the event.
Was there? I didn't see anything. Was there some sort of brouhaha at the end of the event?
Oh yeah, massive brawl, massive brawl outside as everything was going down.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
What do you think? You've got a
it.
bunch of Englishmen in there that have been drinking all night at 6 in the morning.
Champion just lost. The British champ just lost, and
it didn't not go over well. What else excites you about this UFC 305 card? I mean, for casuals like myself, we know about the main event. What else should we be looking for when they get going?
Well, I think the co-main event is really solid. Kai Kara-France is coming back after more than a year away. He had a concussion in training and wanted to kind of take it easy for a little bit against Steve Erceg. Erceg debuted in the UFC last June in Vancouver. It was his first fight, taking it on short notice, flew 37 hours or whatever it is from Perth to Vancouver to take his debut on short notice. But he's just been on a rocket ship since then, up until recently when he was kind of thrust into a title fight against Alexandre Pantoja. And he looks very good in that fight. It certainly didn't look like a fish out of water. It was basically one round away from becoming the new champion. And now he's fighting in Perth, where he's from. So this is his hometown against Kai Kara-France. And, the line for this one, I think, is actually pretty generous for Erceg. He's about minus 165. And I think that's kind of I think he should be a bigger favorite, in my opinion. I just don't see where Kai Kara-France is going to beat Steve Erceg. So it's just a really interesting co-main event. Plus, I want to see what Erceg looks like in his return. So that's a fight I certainly have my eye on.
Aaron, there's always lots going on in and around the world of the UFC. Dana White's always making news, but the Canadian scene is seeing a big event coming back. And I just saw you report this earlier this week that folks in Edmonton are going to get, what is this, a UFC fight night? Tell us about the UFC coming back north of the border.
Yeah, so this is the first UFC fight night in Canada since before the pandemic. So it's been, almost 5 years, I guess, since the UFC have had a fight night on Canadian soil. And they're coming back to Edmonton to Rogers Place. It's going to be headlined by Erin Blanchfield and Rose Namajunas, 2 top 5 women's flyweights, which is a pretty solid main event. If you look at some of these other fight night main events, we haven't seen a lot of them where you have 2 top 5 fighters in any particular division going against one another, except for the ones that have been taking place in the Middle East, where there's a big site fee involved. So I think that in Edmonton, you're going to see a lot of solid fights. Derek Lewis is in the co-main event. He hasn't been on a fight night card that he hasn't been in the main event of in 6+ years. So we had him in the co-main event. And then we're going to just see a lot of Canadians on the card. They've announced 4 different fights featuring Canadians. I believe it's Marc-Andre Barrio, Jamie Lynn Horth, Jasmine Jasdavicius, and Chad and Helliger are the 4 Canadians right now that are on the card. And I think we're going to start seeing more Canadians being added to that card in the coming weeks for sure.
Hey, speaking of Canadians that might be added to the card, what's the latest on our guy, Brad Katona from Winnipeg?
Well, last I spoke to Brad, he wanted to be on this card. So I'm hoping that they do add him to this November 2nd card. That's the latest that I've heard. I thought that he looked great in his last fight. It was kind of a mismatch really in his favor. It was like a 6-1 favorite. So I'd like to see him fight against more evenly matched competition this time around.
Well, I mean, listen, and for folks that maybe missed it, you could just kind of reset it, but very unique story. I mean, won the Ultimate Fighter, got released, did a big tour of other organizations, came back, won it again, first guy ever to do that. So he's back with the UFC. How has his time been since then? And where is he at in the pecking order right now as he looks to continue his career forward?
Yeah, a story as unique as his accent is, but it looks like he is going to be, I'm interested to see what he does. Maybe that first fight where he lost in his return in Toronto earlier this year to Garrett Armfield, maybe that was an anomaly because of, the pressure of coming back to the UFC and wanting to perform. And he's talked to me about that fight and how he just had a lot of trouble getting his rhythm in that fight. Then in the next fight against Jesse Butler, looked great. Again, was a big favorite. Didn't leave any questions as to why he was a big favorite on that fight. I would have liked to see him get a finish in that fight. However, he won a very comfortable decision. So I think that we kind of need to see where he's at, and that's why I'd like to see him matched a little bit more evenly for whatever his next fight is.
Aaron Bronsteter with us, talking a little UFC before UFC 305. And of course, for Canadian fans, the sport will be coming north of the border. Now, we can't have a conversation without talking about Conor McGregor. Legit, are we ever going to see this guy fight again in the octagon?
A lot of people say they don't think he is going to fight again. I personally believe that we'll see him in the UFC again. I would be very surprised if Conor McGregor is done. Now, I think a lot of people are a little bit more glass half empty than I am, but I think that we will see him within the next year for sure in the UFC octagon. And I do think that Michael Chandler will still be his opponent. I spoke to Dana White earlier this week and asked why Connor's not fighting again this year. And since then, Connor's really been lobbying to fight in December. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But, Dana was kind of saying he thinks that Connor's going to fight in 2025. Maybe they already have their November and December cards set, and that's why they're looking at next year. But I think time will tell exactly when we see Conor McGregor again.
How would you describe the relationship today in 2024 between Dana White and Conor?
I think the relationship is fine. I think that they might not be that pleased that he pulled out of this last fight due to the toe injury. Usually Conor McGregor would fight through something like that historically, but Conor knows the importance of this fight, and I think that he wants to be 100% for it. So I get it. But it seems to me like things are still hunky-dory between Dana White and Conor McGregor. They spoke recently.
He's been so unreliable over the last number of years. I'm just wondering whether that's straining or at least trying Dana's patience.
Yeah, I don't know if unreliable is necessarily accurate. I mean, he did The Ultimate Fighter as a coach. There were some moments of, I'm sure, unreliability as the coach on that fight. Apparently, on that show, apparently there were just some sessions he didn't show up to. But at the same time, he still comes, does the show. And aside from pulling out of the Chandler fight, which again is due to injury, there hasn't really been anything that would signal that he's been completely unreliable as a fighter for the UFC. Like, he's only really been booked once since the injury. Didn't come to fruition, obviously, but let's see what happens now. I think that, again, I'm fairly confident that we're going to see Conor McGregor in the octagon within the next year.
When was the last time he fought?
So it's been 2+ years at this point in time. When he suffered that injury to Dustin Poirier in their trilogy fight. So it's been a minute.
That being said, even with all the time out, is he still the biggest name in the sport?
Oh, undoubtedly. Like, I think that a lot of people try to argue otherwise, but you just can't. You put Conor McGregor against anybody, and I think that is the biggest fight that the UFC can make right now, regardless of who the opponent is.
When I think of the biggest stars to casual fans, I think of McGregor, John Jones, and I mean, I think Nate Diaz has to be in that mix too, just because of what he's done before. Like, where are those guys right now? And I mean, in particular, Jones, because is he still at the top of the pound for pound rankings?
Well, John Jones, I think, is ranked number 3 right now. So Islam Makhachev is number 1 in the pound for pound. Alex Pereira number 2, and I think John Jones is number 3. If you ask Dana White says that John Jones is undoubtedly the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the sport right now. But I don't know if Dana just looks at pound for pound differently than a lot of other people, or he just doesn't take activity into account. I'm not sure why he continues to make this argument, because to me, pound for pound is like if you took any fighter right now and put them in any body, any sort of division, does that fighter win whatever fight, that is, so to speak. But pound for pound conceptually is kind of a stupid thing, in my opinion. Like, if you want to get rid of these weird debates, I say you just do power rankings, and you have a criteria for what power rankings are in terms of, what's your overall resume, what's your most recent win, strength of schedule, all of that kind of thing. And I think that's a better way of looking at it than pound for pound, because to me, pound for pound is kind of a flawed, thing to try to wrap your head around.
Folks, that's how you get nominated for Journalist of the Year in the MMA game. That breaking it down like that. What about my guy Diaz? Are we going to see him anytime soon?
Who, Nate Diaz or Nick Diaz?
Nate.
Well, you won't see him in the UFC anytime soon. He's not signed to the UFC. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see him in a boxing match. The problem is that last boxing match he did with Masvidal, that people didn't pay him. He's supposed to make a ton of money, and he's taking them to court. So, and then I think, if I recall, there was they asked him to give them the money that he was making for the fight so that they could go and get more money. It was a weird story. Anyways, he's taking them to court. So I hope that things turn around for Nate Diaz. And Nick Diaz was supposed to fight earlier this month in Abu Dhabi on a fight night card, and just that fight fell apart, and we haven't heard anything about it since. So I'm curious to see what happens with Nick Diaz as well.
I'm surprised that he's not still doing UFC stuff. Is this just sort of he wants to do a bunch of other things and there's a lot of money out there? Or because the bottom line is, if he's on a UFC card, there's a lot of people that want to watch it.
Yeah, I think that it's motivated by, making the most amount of money that he can at this point in time. But hey, if the promoters aren't going to pay him, at least if you're going to UFC, you know that the check's going to cash. So I think that we'll have to see what ends up happening from here. But, I don't think that Dana White has been talking much about Nate Diaz coming back these days.
Well, for UFC fans, the focus is on Perth, Australia this weekend. Duplessis, Adesanya, UFC 305. Aaron, always great catching up. Fill people in on all the content you've got over at Sportsnet in and around 305, but the entire MMA game.
Yeah, I did an interview with Dana White earlier this week that's on Sportsnet's website. You can check that out. I think it's also going to be up on YouTube fairly soon, so you can catch it on the Sportsnet YouTube channel. I was on the pregame show with Ailish and Justin Cuthbert earlier this week, so that was a lot of fun. But really, for all of my work, you can just go to www.aaron.report, and I've got it all in one nice place for everybody to navigate fairly easily. So thank you for having me on, Hustler. Always love doing it. And maybe before the UFC goes to the Sphere next month, we can hook it up again.
And listen, done deal. I will hit you up, and always great chopping it up with you. Thanks so much, Aaron, and enjoy what should be a great card this weekend.
Yeah, you too, Hustler. Thanks for having me on.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
Yeah, might be grabbing a couple 1919s tonight at the ballpark. Another great place to go for some of Winnipeg's favorite local beers, of course, is the Beer Can. And with the sun coming out and looking like it's going to be a pretty nice weekend, it will definitely be the place to be. If you haven't checked out the Beer Can yet, Winnipeg's most beautiful outdoor beer garden and restaurant. Make a point of getting down there this summer. 1 Granite Way, just over the Osborne Bridge, next to the Granite Curling Club. And, of course, the Cosmos boys are firing up incredible food there at the Beer Can, as well as all the delicious eats at Next Door at 116 Sherbrooke in the heart of Wolseley. And, of course, the legendary Hoagie Boys with the biggest, baddest sandwiches in the city down on South Osborne at Hoagie Boys. Hockey season's just around the corner, if you can believe it, gang. And, while we'll wait about a month or so for the Jets to get to training camp, minor hockey is getting going. And if you're not ready for the season yet, you need to get down to Royal Sports. For over 40 years, the undisputed #1 hockey store in town is ready for you with all the latest equipment, sticks, skates, goalie equipment, whatever you need to start the season. Royal is ready to drop the puck. Pop by and see him at 750 Pembina Highway. Check him out on Insta as well at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And we got a great game tonight in the Canadian Football League. Riders and Alouettes, still disappointed they're not starting Cody Fajardo, but a big one for Bomber fans as well. If you're looking for a great spot to watch that game, the Bomber game on Sunday, make it Boston Pizza. No better place to get together with the gang than your local BP, enjoying ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, and those gourmet pizzas and more. By the way, great deal right now. Celebrating their anniversary, all medium specialty pizzas, 1964. Right now at Boston Pizza. And, of course, you can also order online and get it hot and fresh to your door by ordering at bostonpizza.com. All right, we'll open up marbles in about 10 minutes. Connor will be back, but it's Friday. We got to bring in the Hacksaw for the NFL Notebook. Lee Hacksaw Hamilton joins us now. Saul, what's going on? How are you?
Hustler, can you hear me? I'm doing well. Welcome. Beer Friday or Football Friday?
Yeah, well, a little bit of both, I think. Let's double it up. Those are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they go quite well together. We saw the kickoff of week 2 of the preseason last night. But there's some really interesting stories happening around the league, as always, throughout training camp. I want to start off asking you about the 49ers. Listen, they've been really successful for a number of years, and it seems like it's catching up to them a little bit. I mean, a real cash crunch and some really good players that don't want to play if they're not getting paid more than their set to make this year. What's the latest on the challenges that John Lynch is having in the Bay Area?
Well, the Niners general manager has his hands full right now juggling the salary cap. But when you're a great program, a great team, your players' contracts as they come up, they're all going to get bumped. The great players obviously are knocking down mega money. Well, he's got about a half of his key guys signed, but he's dealing with a bad salary cap situation. And he's dealing with Brock Purdy at quarterback, who's could be up for another contract, and look what he's done in the last year and a half. And he's dealing with the chronically unhappy Brandon Ayuk, who I think is a wide receiver they really want to keep, but they just have not been able to creatively finance a deal because of all the other contracts that they gave out. I mean, the contracts that they gave George Kittle, the contracts to Deebo Samuel, the contract to Christian McCaffrey that's $19 million per season. And again, the cap is the cap, and you can't go over that cap. And then you got Ayuk, who's kind of complicated this whole thing, Andrew, because he just goes through these periods of love me not. You know, he had a meeting 3 weeks ago with John Lynch. I called it Economics 101, where Lynch explained to him all the implications of the cap and why taking him from $14 million to $30 million just didn't work if they were going to retain the quarterback, Brock Purdy. And, you know, the minute you renegotiate somebody's contract, whatever the cap hit was this year gets pushed into next year and gets bigger. And there's a bunch of teams that are having all those kinds of problems. So John Lynch has got his hands full. You know, so Ayuk emerges from the Economics 101 meeting, and that Friday says, I'm staying. I understand everything. The following Friday, he's on social media, shooting me a message, you a message, the whole world a message. I want out. I want to be traded. And they thought they had a deal with New England, and the deal fell apart right at the end because he didn't want to go. New England was willing to guarantee him the pay bump from $14 million to $28 million. And the Patriots would pay a significant price in terms of draft pick compensation. That didn't work. Then they talked to Cleveland. They thought they might have a deal of Amari Cooper and a draft pick, but Ayuk didn't want to go to Cleveland. And I'm sure Cleveland was willing to give him $28 million. The latest one is Pittsburgh, and have had this ongoing conversations off and on with the Steelers. There's evidently a deal in place that would take Ayuk from $14 million to $28 million, but they're having problems with what the compensation would be coming back from Pittsburgh to San Francisco. So that thing has been kind of put onto the back burner again. And, you know, we only got 2 more exhibition games, and then everybody gets into game mode. So there's not a lot of time to get somebody into a brand new system and say he's going to hit the floor running and flying. And now John Lynch, yesterday, finally talked to the media again and says we've reopened talks. We've made a 3rd contract offer to Ayuk. It's got to be some type of creative financing. I don't think they want to go from 14 to 28 million lickety split. I think they'd like to see him have another banner season or 2 before they give him upper echelon money. It's just really complex in San Francisco because they got to deal with all these other guys almost simultaneously. So they don't want to trade him. I think if they had their druthers, Andrew, I think they'd try to move Deebo Samuel in a deal. Samuel's already signed at $21 million, and he's a multi-position guy, but he gets hurt. And that's why his bargaining value, I don't think, is all that high. If you're asking me, calmer heads will prevail. I think Ayuk's going to be in San Francisco on opening day. I'll be kind of surprised if he's moved. Why would you want to leave a Super Bowl-type team to go somewhere where they're building? Why would you go to New England, which may have the worst roster in NFL football? Why would you want to go to Pittsburgh, which is, you know, on the ropes with 2 one-year rentals at quarterbacks and a lot of deficiency at other roster spots on the offensive side of the ball? So I think he'll be there opening day in San Francisco, and he still owes them a year. And, you know, he's running up fines like you won't believe. It's $50,000 a day because he's not on the field practicing. So we shall see where this goes. It seems to change every Friday. There's something different out there.
Lee, stayed in the NFC. It's been a wild, kind of a weird offseason for Jerry Jones. Kind of quiet, and they still got some work to do. They have some unhappy campers. What's going on in Jerry world right now with the Cowboys?
Well, the Cowboys on the field under Mike McCarthy have not had great success in terms of postseason wins. My goodness, their last Super Bowl was 1,000 years ago. Jerry is eternally optimistic. I will say this in defense of Jerry, and a lot of people don't like Jerry. Organizationally, they're really good in player personnel acquisitions. They draft really well. Now, they've been beset by a bunch of injuries in recent years to some of their younger good players, and some of guys been forced into retirement, like their star inside linebacker Logan Vanderbush. The big issue that they got in Dallas right now is they're up against the cap because they do take care of their players. They pay enormous salaries to their stars. But now you got Dak Prescott in the final year. You got CD Lamb, the next diva wide receiver who wants to be taken care of. He wants his money immediately. And 2 years from now, you got Micah Parsons, their superstar linebacker defensive end. So they're going to have to creatively finance a way to keep Prescott. I was told Prescott now wants $60 million. He views himself, his agent views him as state-of-the-art, top-rung quarterback. His one-loss record regular season is fabulous. But Hustler, he's got 2 playoff wins in his entire career. I think his record's like 2-6, 2-8, 2-9. He wants $60 million. And you got CD Lamb, who's now just flat out come said, I want $33 million. I want to be slotted right behind the Minnesota Vikings star Justin Jefferson. And I don't see how Dallas can do that and sign Prescott at 60. And then a year from today, they're going to have to really deal with Micah Parsons. So, Jerry's world, everything is fine, and we'll get through it. And historically, they've always gotten through it. They've always had cap problems, and they restructure guys. But that bill does come due, and I just don't know how they can take care of 3 stars almost simultaneously. And if that's not enough, then you got the story that's out there. Is Mike McCarthy in danger? Again? This is the 3rd year McCarthy's
I'm surprised he's back.
Yeah, and he hasn't done bleep in terms of getting to the postseason and posting any victories. So the McCarthy story is out there too. But you and I know the whole world revolves around the Dallas Cowboys, does it not, Hustler?
It's on some networks, it certainly does. Another
Yes.
team that is going to be getting a ton of press is the Jets for obvious reasons. Aaron Rodgers is back. We thought that they had really added a big-time piece in Hassan Reddick when they acquired him. He doesn't seem to want to be a Jet. How is this going to play out, Lee?
He just wants to be paid. Hell, he'd move to Winnipeg if they pay him what he wanted. That's the issue.
It looked good in blue and gold.
Yeah, the Jets got him from the Eagles. I think it was for a 3rd-round pick, and they really thought this guy. I think he's a really good player. As edge rusher, sometimes a defensive end, prolific linebacker, blitz guy. He was due to make $16.5 this year, and he showed up. He said, "I'm not coming to the OTAs," and they didn't come to camp. He's running up $50,000 a day in fines. He has been fined $1.8 million already as part of this union agreement with the NFL that if guys under contract don't show, when the clock starts ticking, they get fined $50 a day. $1.8 million. Now, he wants a huge pay hike. He wants to go into the mid-20s. And the Jets, I just think, are tired of the act. And he has to be traded. They shopped him. The general consensus is, yeah, that's a good player, but why would we trade you something significant and inherit your problem? Because we don't think he's a $25 million a year linebacker. He's a fine player, but not at that price tag. So then the Jets general manager, he stood up the middle of this past week, and he said, is that your name on the contract? Is that your signature on the contract? You owe us a year, and we are not trading you. And by the way, you owe the league $1.8 million. Are you going to continue this holdout? So this thing is really at loggerheads. The only thing I do, if I had Hassan Reddick's phone number, is I'd call the man and say, do you know who Antonio Brown is? Do you know the former Steeler running back who was a star, who sat out a year? What happened to both those guys? They were never, ever the same again. And by the way, Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown are both out of the NFL. And at your age, why do you want to miss a season? That's where we are. The man has to realize his name's on that contract. He signed it. Go play the final year. And if you continue to be great, then there'll be a payday coming out. But if you get hurt, you lose, obviously, your ability to negotiate a big contract extension if you get hurt in the final year of the deal. So I kind of understand both sides, but dude can't sit out another year. That'd be crazy.
Lee, while we're on the defensive side of the football, big moves made yesterday by the Atlanta Falcons, who had quite the offseason, adding to the quarterback side. Now they're addressing the other side of the football, including getting 4-time Pro Bowler Matthew Judon.
Yeah, it's interesting. You and I talked, I think, right prior to the NFL draft, and we were kind of doing a mock draft. And when Atlanta's pick came up at number 8, I said they're going to draft defense because they need defense, and there was a lot of studs on defense. And instead, they kind of shocked the world. They shocked the owner. They shocked the quarterback, Kirk Cousins, by drafting Michael Penix, a quarterback at number 8 for down road. And they didn't address defense. I don't know this part of a game plan, but all of a sudden they've cashed in on defense. They traded to get Matthew Judon, who was in the final year of his deal in New England. He wanted a pay bump. He was a Belichick guy, and they weren't making any progress at all. And the new coach, Jared Mayo, had been there before, must not think as highly of Judon and his price tag, because they decided to trade him, and they shipped him to Atlanta for a third-round pick. Atlanta's general manager came out and flat out said, we want you, we need you, you're going to play here, we're going to be really good this year. We're not going to talk about a contract extension unless you're on this practice field with your helmet and your pads on, practicing, getting ready for the start of the season. Judon's in Atlanta. I don't know that he's practiced yet. There may be some dialogue going on there. And then right after that, after the Judon acquisition, Atlanta turns around last night and signs Pro Bowl Denver Bronco cornerback safety Justin Simmons. Pretty good player, has gotten a lot better, lot bigger, lot tougher last couple of years. I was surprised the Broncos didn't keep him, but Denver's got just massive salary cap issues vis-a-vis the whole Russell Wilson contract release and all that, and dead money. And so, in a span of 48 hours, Atlanta adds 2 guys on 1-year deals. And if they get them both on the field, Simmons is already there, and if they get Judon on the field, suddenly that's a pretty good addition or 2 to a very young defense with Grady Jarrett and some other guys. So I don't think this was by any blueprint. I think Atlanta kind of fell into it, but they're willing to take on the challenge of, can we get the guys in here on a 1-year rental? If they have a good season, we'll give them an extension going forward.
By the way, gang, if you're wondering, we're using a little bit of a different setup today. I just wrote it in. Marbles registration is open. You just didn't get the normal prompt. We'll give you 5 or 10 minutes. We'll give you a last call. But right now, if you want in for the marble raise, you know what to do. ! Marbles in the chat. Hacksaw, I didn't know what to think when I heard this report. Jim Harbaugh is offering a gig to Colin Kaepernick. Listen, they know each other quite well from their time in San Francisco. Kaepernick's been away from the game for a long time. What's behind this? And might he actually take him up on the offer?
Well, you wake up in the morning, you look out the window in Winnipeg or in San Diego where I am, it's kind of cloudy and overcast, then the sun comes through and burns it all off, and then it turns out to be a nice day. Well, when this story kind of filtered out about 24 hours ago, it came from Kaepernick, who indicated, I'd still like to play. And he's been out of it for 7 years. Initially it was because it was a self-imposed exile recovering from shoulder surgery. And then it's the fallout from what he did, the kneeling during the national anthem, and just the fallout around the NFL very early on. And nobody wanted to touch him. Baltimore was the only one that ever brought him in. They thought they were working on a deal, and all of a sudden, Kaepernick's agent asked for starters' money, and Baltimore said, no, we got Lamar Jackson, but he could flourish in what we're running, this RPO package. Kaepernick is the backup to Jackson. You'll get a chance to play and maybe make some money, and we'll give you some incentives. And the whole deal fell apart right at the end, and nobody's touched him since that point in time. It started with Kaepernick saying, I still think I can play. He's fanatical about being fanatical about training. I have no doubt. Now, he's not in NFL game shape. And then it filtered out that I have talked to people about maybe coming in as a part-time coach, an intern coach, if you will. And then it leaked out it was the Chargers and Harbaugh that he talked to. Well, Harbaugh, 12 hours later, kind of put the fire out. He said, our coaching staff is set. I don't have room for him at this point in time. Yes, I did talk to him multiple times. And at the times we talked, he didn't express a great deal of interest. And B, even though the whole damn media in LA and San Diego, including Hacksaw, is all over us because our quarterbacking situation is iffy with Justin Herbert's injury and the backup has not practiced nor played well in preseason. All of a sudden, people trying to connect the dots. Maybe Kaepernick comes in here, goes through 3 weeks of training camp as a free agent, and then they see where he is. He knows a chunk of the Harbaugh playbook already, and can they get him in game shape for 3 weeks and then get him on the roster to be Justin Herbert's backup? That would make sense to me, but 3 weeks and 7 years away from the game, That's a lot of work to be done just to get him cardiovascular ready to be in the NFL. At this point, Harbaugh said last night he's not a candidate to be my backup quarterback, and at this point, my coaching staff is full. I wouldn't be stunned, though, if you and I get to next January and Kaepernick is maybe quarterback coach or some type of offensive consultant on Harbaugh's staff. But this happened way too late. If this sucker had happened back in January when Harbaugh had first come in the front door, maybe something would have changed. But it was novel. And I'll just give you a quick response. I have a very different opinion of Kaepernick now than I did when the incidents happened, kneeling and refused to salute the flag, and then other players kneeled. And I mean, it was just a crisis for the NFL to deal with, and they could not discipline their players because the union would have created a furor. And what we saw come out of that, because be honest with you, I was really upset. And I come from a military family, upset that this guy would do that to the American flag and the national anthem hustler, because America and its freedoms has allowed this guy to make $14 million a year. I was really peeved. And then, of course, the fallout to Kaepernick. But as time went on, and I network with a lot of people, I found out about what he does off the field. And I don't think the story's been told very much. He personally finances after-school lunch programs in his old college town of Reno, in Oakland, and in San Francisco for the kids from the inner city who don't have enough to eat. He's done that virtually every year. And then he went to Ghana and he wrote a check for $1 million for the building of a pediatric hospital, the first of that kind in that African country. He's done a lot of civil liberties things. He's really unique. He's very intellectual. It kind of flipped my opinion of what Kaepernick initially did. And of course, if you flash back, everybody kneeling and all the heat and hate that everybody got involved in. And then eventually everybody was saluting the flag, standing arm by arm, including Kaepernick. And the point that drove home to me was at the end of the season, Dallas Cowboys stood on the sidelines with their coaching staff and all their players, black and white. And Jerry Jones stood on the sidelines linking arms. So I think the whole world views Kaepernick differently, and I view him differently based on what I found out about what he's doing personally. It's too bad his career evaporated. Injury had something to do with it. Some people have the opinion he's got to be in a special system to run what he runs successfully. We don't run that system. And then obviously the shoulder surgery had something to do with it too. So I bet a year from today, he's probably going to be on Harbaugh's staff as some type of consultant.
Hey, Lee, before we go, I mean, rarely do we go through a week in the preseason without some significant injuries, but two massive, massive blows, one to the Minnesota Vikings and one to the Buffalo Bills this week.
Yeah, really tough. J.J. McCarthy under Kevin O'Connell, I think, was really on a fast track. He learned the playbook. What he did coming off the bench when it appeared he was going to be a backup for the entire season. What he did coming off the bench in that Vikings first preseason game was pretty impressive. And again, it's a different game than the college football. He's got great wide receivers. He wasn't terrified by what he was doing. He seemed to play really on the edge with confidence. And then for him to get dinged and wind up with a sore knee, and they thought, well, it's a minor meniscus. And then they got in there and they found out it was a complete tear. And instead of a 3-week snippet job on the knee, this is total reconstruction of the meniscus, suturing and all that. It's going to be out the entire year. So that's a big setback for the kid. That being said, he'll be in the classroom regimen with Kevin O'Connell every minute of every day. He'll go through the unique, get acquainted to NFL diets and NFL strength programs. He'll be a very different player a year from today. That's a setback. And in Buffalo, I've talked to a number of different people around the league. I've been on a bunch of different shows. My biggest fear is the window's closing fast on Buffalo. They've lost so many players because of injury and age. Then they got rid of Stephon Diggs. They don't have what I think is legitimacy at the running game. They got Josh Allen, but now losing Matt Milano for a second year in a row. Last year, full season, broken leg. This is going to be at least half the season with a torn pectoral muscle. I just don't know that Sean McDermott's got enough players now. Suddenly, that just does not look like a high-powered, going deep into the playoff football team, even though you got the stud quarterback out of Wyoming, Josh Allen. There's so many things have changed around Josh Allen that, yeah, I think the window, unfortunately, looks like it might be closing faster than anybody on the Niagara frontier wants to admit.
So always great to catch up. What's cooking over at LeeHacksawHamilton.com this weekend?
Well, listen, everybody from Winnipeg, that's part of my O Canada network. I do my podcast at 1 p.m. Pacific. When Dude is done with his, we invite you to switch over to watch mine because we cover a lot of different stuff, and we also touch hot buttons on the National Hockey League. So my podcast is on the YouTube channel. It's just Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. You can see the one we did yesterday. Mondays at 1 p.m. Pacific, Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. When you're done listening to WST, come join us stateside. And if you like sports, I write about it every day. Check out my website. If you check it the first thing every morning, Hustler, you will probably even learn something. It's just leehacksawhamilton.com. You give me 5 minutes. I'll tell you everything in the world of sports. Then you can call Hustler and be part of his show and let him talk about it too. That's what I do.
I hit it every day. Have a great weekend, Saul. We'll talk to you next week.
Beer Friday, next Friday, Football Friday. Have a great sports weekend. Thanks, Hustler. Take care.
Good stuff. There is Lee Hacksaw Hamilton, one of my favorite parts of the entire week, getting ready for the marble race, talking to Hacksaw, especially as we get closer to NFL season. All right. Last call for marbles, everybody. We'll give you about a minute. Andrew, just, say give him 30 seconds a minute, and then you can close it off and get the operation rolling. In the meanwhile, don't forget the Fish are back this weekend. Huge weekend for the Goldeyes. Tonight is the Manitoba Social Night. If you get there early, if you're one of the first 1,000 fans, you can get your hands on one of those Fred Penner bobbleheads. And tomorrow, of course, the legendary Bark at the Park. Should be quite the scene tomorrow for the game. And all week long is the Fish are in first place. Back on the road next week and coming back for one final homestand. And if you had tickets for yesterday's game, you can redeem them for one of the games this weekend or the final week of the regular season. Goldeyes.com for more information or 982-BASE. Got to thank our friends over at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, finishing up another incredible summer and fishing season. If you're thinking about an amazing fly-in fishing experience where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens is the spot. And as amazing as the fishing is, the hospitality of the Trent family and the Aikens team is even better. Go to aikenslake.com. You can find out more information on everything going on at Aikens, and you can contact them. Might even be able to get out there before the end of the season as it dies down, but booking well into 2025 right now. And check them out on their socials as well at Aikens Lake for more of Aikens Lake. And of course, we're back with live racing coming up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They're back at it. The regular schedule for Assiniboia Downs will continue. So you can get down to the track on Monday. I think I'm kind of working through fantasy drafts. Monday's an open date. We might be deciding to head on down to ASD, but we'll be back at it. Michael will be back on Monday, and we will fire up our picks as I try to chase him down like the horses chasing the leader. Again, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday through mid-September, live racing with our friends at Assiniboia Downs. All right, let's do a quick Breezy Bend golf report for our friends at Breezy. Looking forward to being a part of their member guest tournament and sitting down with Kevin Cheveldayoff at Breezy on Sunday night. We'll let you know about that on Monday's show. It's Denny McCarthy and Hideki Matsuyama tied for the lead at the FedEx St. Jude Championship. 1 stroke up on Sam Burns, who's 10 under. Oh, and guess who? Scotty Scheffler, 9 under par. Justin Rose is at 8, along with Chris Kirk. The Canadians in the field. Winnipeg-born Nick Taylor needs a big performance this week. He went 2 under again today. He's 4 under right now in the top 20, tied for 18th. Our pal from Coolbet, Taylor Pendrith, 1 over today. He's at 4 under as well. Moving down the line, Corey Connors is -1 for the tourney. Mac Hughes and Adam Hadwin, both +1. No cut in this one. But again, it's all about being in the top 50 and moving on to the next stage of the FedEx Cup playoffs. If you're interested in an incredible long-term home, one of Winnipeg's top private courses for your family, make it Breezy Bend. Give our pal Corey Johnson a call at the clubhouse for more information on membership for 2025. And of course, you can always check them out online at breezybend.ca. Just before we bring in Connor, and we'll get to the cool bet lines, why not question of the day for not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray? Let's get to this UFC. And this is actually a nice little segue into the Cool Bet lines because we had Aaron Bronsteter on. This fight in UFC is going to be amazing. And it is basically a pick'em. Jerkus Duplessis, the South African, is minus 104. Izzy Adesanya is minus 112. Who you got in the chat for all you UFC fans? Let us know. I need to be convinced on which side I need to be on when I throw down my $25 bet at CoolBet and get a free $25 bet on Monday, my favorite weekly promo over on CoolBet. Let's get Connor in here, and I will quickly ask you, Connor, what's your leans on these games tonight? Like at this point, the lines are almost secondary in the games for this for the Canadian Football League this week. Alouettes are 2-point favorites. Elks are 1.5-point favorites. The Lions are now minus 2.5-point favorites. I'm just looking at money lines, though. I'm liking the Alouettes tonight still. I think I'm going to take the Elks, and I'm going to take the Bombers. I guess 3 road teams. That's not necessarily always a great strategy, but I do like them to win, and obviously I got faith in the Blue.
Yeah, I was going to say all 3 road teams is dicey, but I don't know. Montreal tonight, there's just so much uncertainty with whether or not Fajardo is playing or not. That we talked about that earlier. I don't know. I still do like them over the Rough Riders tonight. Last night I agreed with you and I took the stamps. So maybe we gotta go the opposite way. But yeah, the Elks as well. They're 1-2 straight, so I don't mind that pick. And then we've talked a lot. I do like the Bombers over the BC Lions this weekend. They had the blueprint a few weeks ago. I do think Nathan Rourke, yes, he might end up being the best quarterback in the CFL in a week or two, and that's not a might. He will probably. But this week, on a short week, yes, he's got the playbook, but he was just in the NFL. He's been everywhere. I think it's going to take him a week or two to get up to the Nathan Rourke that we've seen in years past. So I like the Bombers this weekend as well.
Tons of NFL preseason this week. Bet on that at your own risk. You never know who is going to play, how long they're going to play for. But all sorts of stuff up right now at CoolBet. You've got Major League Baseball tonight. The WNBA is back. You can hit those Caitlin Clark overs if you'd like. And, of course, tons of NFL futures. Check out today's lock shop. Myself, Pat, and Jake from CoolBet hit a few of our favorite win total bets of the year, as well as to make or miss playoffs. But if you are an NFL fan and you like doing season-long bets, there is so much waiting for you as we get closer to kickoff next month in the National Football League. And as I mentioned, if you do like betting on UFC, best promo of the week, you make a $25 bet on one of the fights, you win it, it's in your account. Regardless, if you win or lose, you'll have a free $25 bet on Monday. So make it happen. And as I say, keep on convincing me. Dirkus or the Style Bender for the main event. Do you are you much into the UFC, Connor? Do you watch a lot of the fights?
No. I'll watch like the big ones when everyone's watching, but I am the most casual of casual fans. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I'm to be honest, I'm kind of like you as well. But I am really intrigued in this fight. I mean, Adesanya is sort of one of those guys, maybe just at that level below McGregor. And listen, he's great with the mic. I mean, he's a wrestling guy. If a guy can cut a good promo, I'll watch him in the octagon. So we'll see. We'll see on that. Again, if you haven't played a cool bet before, use the promo code WST when you make your first deposit for a 100% bonus up to $200 over at coolbet.com. All right. Well, you know what time it is. Been working behind the scenes. It's a little different today with Michael away, but I think our guy Andrew is coming through big time for us. Andrew, what's the word here? Do we want to fire up the marble race? If you can, feel free to turn your mic on. Fill us in. How many marbles do we have in the operation today? I can't hear. Look at this. We're over 200. I'm not hearing Andrew right now, but we've got plenty of, look at this. We've got the marbles up right now. I think we've got the list of everyone. If you want to either let me know or fire a text and just let us know how we're looking. we can get everyone set up. And you said ready to go for marbles or whatever. Right on. So yeah, let's get to it. I'm not sure if you've already picked a track already. Maybe Remus gave you a heads up, but it's a little bit of a mystery today. All right, where are we at? We're at some alien one. And it looks like we've got 227 marbles. So here we go, everybody. Good luck. We've got some serious. Jay Miller's in first. Daniel right away. And again, Andrew's doing a great job. The fact that we're even on having a marble race is frankly a little bit of a miracle. But credit to Andrew behind the scenes, and of course Michael for helping him out. This is new for him, so we may not have. Look at SK right off the bat, looking quite good. You might want to zoom out a little bit just so we can kind of see a few more of these. Who do we've got? SK and Cowboy right now. Brass Bonanza and Rat River Rebel. Huachenko's right in the mix as well. This is a very wild track, one that we have not done yet so far. But we're coming in through. There's still plenty of time left. We're going down sort of the Plinko board right now. Cowboy in first and SK just ahead of Brass Bonanza and the Rat River Rebel. All right, a few more obstacles. Let's see who gets through. Oh, look at Pat B. Pat B with an amazing transition ahead of all the leaders. Pat's on one side, Adam Draward's on the other, and you can see there's two areas to come in. Who is going to get into the bin first for the win? It looks like it's pretty much anyone's race. Just get her in on that bin there at the bottom, Andrew, because that is where they're gonna. Yeah, right there. Let's see who's coming in first. Oh, and it's one that goes back and forth, so we could have some eliminations. Pat's in first place, still on the one side. It looks like Jeff Bowes on the first place on the other side. Pat's gonna get in first. Is Pat in? No. Jeff Bowes also done. Adam Draward with the miracle victory after Pat. Ross Ransby just got knocked out as well. Sorry about that, Roscoe. Jeff Bowes and Pat had the first opportunity to get into the bin, and Adam Draward steals victory from our two leaders. What a race. All right, our top 10, as everyone else finishes up, is Stella Loves. Rat River Rebel came in third. Tony Thunder, then Holdy. No Frills Dino, D. Michalak, Trevor Bird, Derminator, and Nicole J. Our top 10. Now, many people getting to the end, but not getting into the bin. What an absolute heartbreaker for Pat at the end. Great win for Adam. Adam Draward, is Adam there? Yeah, huge W, exactly. And Timbro just barfed 12 times. Russ Lowen as well. That was a great race. Adam Draward, our winner. Adam, fire me a message. Let me know what size you are. We've only got a couple left right now. We're going to be getting some new ones in the next couple weeks. But if we've got your size right now, we'll hook you up. Just send an email, winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com. Let me know what your hoodie size is. Huge thanks to Andrew Z for making that happen. Wasn't sure whether we were going to be able to pull off the marble race today without Remus, and we did it. So thanks to Remo for taking the time to get that done. And just as we bring Connor back in, we knew that there would have been a potential mutiny, and I was still nervous. Andrew's been killing it all week, though, so I'm not surprised that it did work the way that it did. But what a finish, too. I mean, poor Pat and Jeff. I mean, they were right there. Much like the Temple of Steve, you're not in until you're in. And Adam Draward was the beneficiary of it all.
That's a wild finish. I love the ones where, you know, like the bucket there was moving, and even if you're in first and you're the first one there and you think you've won, you're not. It's like dropping the ball at the 1 yard line, celebrating a touchdown too early. It's right down to the end. And shout out Adam. Earlier on during the show in chat, he was messaging that he actually subbed for my rec hockey team a few times last year as a goalie, but I wasn't there for those games that he subbed. So I'll hopefully get him in the rec hockey league again this year and get him subbing. And then he can wear his WST hoodie to the games now. Perfect.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Adam, again, congratulations. Great stuff and great week. And again, a big thanks to Andrew, the other Andrew, who has been doing an amazing job the last few days while Michael's been away, getting us on and off the air and making the show all happen. And I can pretty much guarantee you we'll be having more of Andrew in the future as needed, and of course as we continue to grow. What's up? You sticking in town for the weekend, or what's on the agenda in the Team Hrabchak?
Well, should I be like Remus and say, I'm going to head out to Winnipeg Beach? No, I'm kidding. I'm staying in the city. Yeah, exactly. I'm staying in the city. 3 big Goldeyes games this weekend. And for tonight, we have a little bit of an update courtesy of the Goldeyes Twitter account. But there's less than 1,000 seats remaining for tonight's game. So if you want tickets, they're going fast. Yeah, I said earlier, we're expecting a really big crowd tonight. Maybe a lot of those people got the cancellation last night. They'll roll those tickets over and show up tonight, but should be an awesome crowd at Blue Cross Park. So if you want one of the last 1,000 tickets, go buy tickets right now. Goldeyes.com/tickets. Should be a great night, great crowd for first place ball club. Excuse me.
That is for sure. Hey, by the way, Andrew, one thing that I normally do that I forgot. Do you still have the marbles up? Is there a way we can put that up and just scroll down everyone's how everyone did? Yeah, click on that button where it says, I think, final results. Perfect. Yeah. And then let's just roll down just slowly through it and see how everybody did. There's Adam Draward at the top. We kind of went through the top 10. It'll just, hit some of the names that we see, but it's just as long as you do a nice slow scroll all the way to the bottom, we'll see where everybody finished. I see, there's Kenny's water bottle getting into the top 40 or so. A few of the ESTers with pretty nice performances today. There's Ray. Winnipeg Sports Talk, 47th. Not too bad. Alex from the Peg. There's Rob Pepper. Let's see where we finished today. Stam. I saw my pal Ross get bumped over the top rope. He got X. There's Shorin at 86th. What do we have here? Shorin, by the way, I think I may have gone over the top rope today as well. And then just roll through and see everyone that got X-nayed either on during the track or trying to get into the bin at the bottom. You can just keep on rolling there, dude. Everyone will just see that, just so if people want to go back and check where they are on the YouTube channel, they will be able to do that. There we go, Doug Phil. Wow, lots of people got busted out at the end of that one. Winnipeg Walter, Tyson Ducharme. Sorry about that, Tyson. There's Jeff Bowes, heartbreaker on that one. So again, it's all there. You can go to YouTube if you missed your name and just check out where you finished up. Good stuff. I'm looking forward to this game tonight. Go Owls. And on Sunday night, let's go Bombers. Let's have the Bomber defense welcome Nathan Rourke back to the Canadian Football League and remind him what's up in the West Division. It's going to be a great one. Monday should be a good show. Remo's going to be back. And of course, I'm going to be doing that event with Chevy on Sunday night. So we'll see what we can get out of the Jets general manager on the latest is. I'm not sure he's going to be disclosing all the contract talks that's happening, but I actually do want to ask him, a little bit more about the job of the GM and, things like offer sheets and what goes into trade. So we'll have some of that for you on Monday as well. But thanks again to Andrew. Hell of a job filling in. We'll look forward to having him back soon. Connor, you as well, man. Super fun having you on the program for the last few days. Of course, Michael's going to be gone a little bit more towards the end of August. So I think once next week and then the entire following week. So for all of your rabid fans, don't worry, everyone. You're going to be getting more Connor as we get forward. And of course, don't forget Monday morning, you can check out the YouTube channel or the podcast for the latest for Winnipeg Sports Talk this week. He'll have the latest on the Bombers. And of course, this huge series for the Fish as they look to stay on top in the American Association. Thanks again to all of our sponsors for making the show happen every day. Everybody in chat, wild show today. Appreciate you all jumping in. Connor Hrabchak, Andrew Z behind the board, and all of you for making us a part of your routine. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you Monday on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.